All right, everybody. Welcome to another Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard. Great to see you guys here, all the ballers. August 22nd, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. One day after the Giants and Jets took each other on in Florham Park in a joint practice, I was there to watch it for myself. I can give you my firsthand accounts, analysis, and breakdowns of what we saw from both sides of the ball. Definitely want to get into my 53-man roster projection, my very early 53-man roster projection, considering we are still several days out, including one more preseason game on deck at MetLife Stadium before Joe Shane and Brian Daboll have to cut down to 53 and the waiver claims begin. But first, I want to get into an interview I did with Darius Slayton that is now up on the New York Daily News website as we talk now on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network and on the PL on NFL YouTube channel. These are the types of interviews, conversations that I always hope to bring you. Candid, honest responses from players, from people associated with the team that give you a window into how they are thinking and feeling. And so Slayton and I talked about a couple topics, primarily coming out of Sauce Gardner's, essentially his implicit shade thrown at Daniel Jones. It is completely fascinating to me that while there are plenty of players in the league that people don't think are very good or people think are overrated, it's very rare that you see a player called out publicly so frequently as Daniel Jones has been. You think about Baker Mayfield going back to GQ saying he couldn't believe the Giants drafted Daniel. The San Francisco 49ers last year, in a great article by Michael Silver in the San Francisco Chronicle, saying that it was unbelievable and ludicrous that the Giants had paid him $40 million a year contract. Patrick Peterson, then the former Vikings corner, who Daniel Jones and the Giants scored on both times they played in 2022 and beat, and Daniel Jones set records against in that wild card playoff win, saying that there's nothing impressive about Daniel Jones going back to this spring. And now we have Sauce Gardner, the Jets corner, who really fought back whatever was crossing his mind. But it was obvious that there was kind of a battle within himself to be diplomatic. Of course, the expression on his face, betrayed his feelings and emotions and his belief in that moment. But to me, it's just a fascinating phenomenon. And also in response to whatever happened against the Jets, of course, you can watch a practice and see it one way, and someone might watch it and see it another. So Darius Slayton kind of put it all together in one bundle because Sauce Gardner, as we know, waved goodbye to the Giants sideline at length, 10 to 20 seconds of him standing there going like this to the entire sideline. John Mara, the front office, everybody's over there, including the players and the coaches. And what Darius Slayton told me, he said, they can walk away from yesterday, beat their chest, and say they held us to whatever. But in a real game, at the end of the day, if the Jets defense played us how they did, meaning just dropping back, taking away all the deep shots, and giving the Giants things underneath, Slayton said, we would have ran the ball for a bazillion yards and we would have won the game. And if they came up to us, they would have gotten beaten deep. But Slayton went on and said, what did you expect Daniel Jones to do? Again, it's a defense that's playing him deep and taking away everything down the field, as we know the Giants are trying to emphasize. He said, if DJ threw it up into double coverage, we'd be right back on SportsCenter. But he checks it down, and then everybody's like, oh, man, we couldn't get anything going today. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. He says, think about it. If he's out there and launched a double-covered contested pass, people say, what is he looking at? But when he checks it down to a running back, people say, oh, man, the Giants couldn't get anything going today. He has a point. He has a point, of course, about how the Giants offense is going to be judged. Of course, Slayton said flat out, the way that Daniel Jones can change the perception of himself is by winning, right? That's how any player can go from where Daniel is in the minds of players around the league and change that narrative. But Slayton said, as far as Sauce Gardner goes, it's too easy for somebody to attach themselves to a negative narrative and just pile on. He feels like being a veteran in the league, he has seen enough now that you really truly don't know who and what a player is until you're around them day after day, until you practice with them day after day. And sometimes you're disappointed. Sometimes you're impressed and you're surprised and you realize that someone is as advertised. but he feels like a lot of people are talking about Daniel who don't truly understand who he is and what he is. And some fascinating quotes throughout that article that you can check out on nydailynews.com, and we can talk about it more here. But one interesting thing I thought was Darius kind of went around the league and said, listen, if we were in Jacksonville, he wouldn't be as much of a lightning rod. Like he said, people don't talk as much about Trevor Lawrence. He said, meanwhile, perception of Justin Herbert is that he's a top 5 quarterback, but isn't that a guy who has flaws? Why is he perceived as top 5? Is he really? And he even went on to say, Derek Carr, listen, he's $37.5 million. And I don't even know what Derek Carr is doing right now. I haven't heard his name at all. I don't know if he's playing well, playing poorly. And yet Daniel Jones is being featured prominently on Good Morning Football. So this all points to the fact that Daniel Jones is not just a talking point between us here when we talk about Giants diehard fans, the direction of this organization, their decision on who their franchise quarterback is for now and in the future. But nationally and even league-wide, it's taken on a life of its own. And so I thought this was a good window into how one of the Giants veterans, one of Daniel Jones's closer friends, a guy who was drafted the same year with him, processed it, but not only processed it from a Daniel Jones perspective, but also kind of fired back in a way at the way that the Jets were perceiving that joint practice. Darius Slayton feeling like, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that the Giants offense took what was given to them. Of course, in the 11-on-11 period, Malik Neighbors drops a touchdown pass, and that changes everything. Would have been down at the 1 or inside the end zone. But that is how it goes. In the NFL, fact of the matter is, the story of a lot of the Giants' disappointments in recent years can be attributed to 2 or 3 plays here and there. And it's easy to say, well, Bobby Okereke's interception would have counted if Drew Phillips wasn't called for a holding penalty in the end zone. And the Giants offense would have scored in the 2-minute if Malik Neighbors catches that ball. But that's the difference in the NFL. You make those plays or you don't. So Slayton understood that. We were talking about that afterwards. And that's something, Brian Daboll's team understands. You can't be looking for excuses. The result is the result. And so the Giants were outplayed overall in that practice, particularly on the other side of the ball, where Aaron Rodgers was completing a ton of passes down the field on the Giants secondary. We'll get into that as we talk about, waiver priorities and where the Giants might be looking come next week. First, want to tell you about Boom Chaga and our sponsors, and then we will get right to your questions. I already saw somebody check in with a super chat that's going to get us rolling. Looks like it's Tudo, so I'm going to throw that up there. And here we go. We are sponsored here on the Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard podcast by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning. Actually drinking coffee this evening because I need a little shot of adrenaline and caffeine here. When I take it, I immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you will get a 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means month supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. So that is the subscribe and save option, Talkin Ball 25. Punch it in, order it, and then you can cancel out the subscription. You do not need to stay on if you only want a month. Also brought to you here by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced coffee and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte with this natural concentrate. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. And BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor Pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today, use the promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, and get in on the action. BetOnline, The game starts here. Tuto kicks us off, says massive salutes and respects to Big Boss Pat, the king of New York Giants football organization. My appreciations there. And all diehard fans across the pond. And please slap all stinky boys losers, including Saquon. Tuto always brings it. Tuto always supporting the channel. Thank you so much. Juicy Juice checks in with $5 super chat, says weak sauce, a sixth grader could have handled that question better. You know, it's interesting. Gardner actually, well, let's face it, Juicy Juice, in all fairness, Sauce Gardner could have gone the route of Baker Mayfield, Patrick Peterson, Niners players in the past, where he just rips him openly, right? Sauce Gardner at least thought better of whatever he was about to say. So I guess that shows some restraint. Though I was actually talking to somebody earlier who said they were surprised that Gardner did not kind of just give a stock answer and move on, that he was even at the moment unable to prevent himself from kind of smirking and slipping in that moment, that was unlike him. He is honest though up there. And, listen, we appreciate that. No one's blasting Sauce Gardner for being honest, for sure. We want honesty from our athletes when they're talking to us and sharing their feelings, for absolutely. I think Juicy Juice, it's just, I ask athletes this, I ask players this, I ask coaches this. It's really difficult to find a player who is open season on like Daniel Jones. My best view of it, to be totally honest, is the contract that he has. And now Baker Mayfield did say his criticism to GQ of Daniel Jones way back in 2019, way before Daniel Jones got paid. So that had nothing to do with the $40 million a year contract. But the element of Daniel Jones getting that contract, Saquon Barkley not getting paid, and people understanding when a team is built a certain way, who has earned the money, who has not, or at least if you're going to pay player B, player A deserves to get paid as well or first, right? We even heard Kayvon Thibodeau say, I think it was in January on a podcast, that he thought Saquon should have gotten paid first. And so that he was deserving. And this is, players know. And so my best view of it, Juicy Juice and everybody else, is that the Daniel Jones open season, everybody willing to rip the player, and I'm talking about within the league, among his peers, among NFL players, I think it has to do with the belief that the contract he has not been earned, because there's a lot of guys who are, who are making less money than him, whether they're on rookie deals, right, which is cost controlled, nothing to do about that, or otherwise. There are a lot of players in the league maybe factoring more significantly into their team's bottom line and making less. So that's my anecdotal evidence at talking to some people, but this is something I'm going to continue to dig on, because I really just, there's a code of silence and respect essentially in the NFL and really in pro sports in general. You just don't see this very often. But that's why I felt compelled to ask Darius Slayton about it. And that's why that's why I think the Sauce Gardner comment, I'll be honest, that caught me so off guard that he said it though. I was going up to that waiting to hear about him, his response to waving to the Giants sideline, and Malik Neighbors gave an excellent quote about it. They won the day, they can do that. And so I think everyone was ready to just hear Sauce's rationale for doing it. Was he going to add a little swagger to it, which he kind of did. And then it was just a totally innocuous question about Daniel Jones, and off he went. So it was interesting. D-Kit says, Pat, give me my props on the quarterback question to Brandon Brown. I put that thought in your head. Admit it. I'll admit it, D-Kit. You deserve credit for that. And in fact, everybody in the chat who was a part of that chat before that interview with Brandon Brown deserves credit for that. Though obviously, D-Kit, you were driving the conversation there about the quarterback situation, because of course, we have talked about this, but it feels so shaky the situation here with Daniel Jones coming off injury, with Drew Lock being hurt right now, and also not having a highly impressive camp, and then Tommy DeVito being the only other option on the roster. By the way, how about Brandon Brown saying "and Tommy" when I said you're okay with Daniel and Drew as your quarterbacks in weeks 1 and 2? Did he slip and put Tommy on the 53? I think he might have. And Tommy, at least, listen, at the start of camp, I wouldn't have put Tommy on the 53. And if the Giants had a strong, top to bottom roster, he would not be on the 53. But I could envision them keeping him on this 53-man roster through Tuesday, because there are a fair amount of expendable backups, especially guys who have been signed recently, due to injuries to other guys, to incumbents, et cetera, people who've been waived. And so, I do think they end up keeping 3 quarterbacks as we stand here now. I mean, Tommy DeVito is getting a full audition for this game. Looks like he's going to start it and play the duration. Is that an audition for elsewhere? I think ideally, like if I'm the general manager of the Giants, Tommy DeVito is not on the roster come next Wednesday or Thursday, because I'm trying to reinforce the roster at some positions of clear need. And I don't need 3 quarterbacks, and Drew Lock at least is supposed to be physically capable by then. But the fact even that Lock is not even prepared to play in this preseason finale is still a concern. So you have to factor that in as well. And so that is where you can lean to the 3 QBs. But yes, D-Kit, absolutely. You were a huge part of that. For those who were not paying attention or didn't see, Brandon Brown, the Giants' assistant general manager, I asked him flat out if they were in the quarterback market because of Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, this situation, guys banged up, Jones's performance against Houston, right? And really the panic button that was rightly being pressed in certain areas of the Giants fan base. And that listen, the Giants aren't going to act panicked publicly after a game like that, but there's obviously concern to fix things and get it right and not have it look like that come the regular season or else, right? So that was the question posed to Brandon Brown. He said flat out no, that they are not in the quarterback market. Why would they be? And then tacked on Tommy there at the end. So D-Kit, you were my muse there. You were my muse, my inspiration. You were correct. G-Men says, good evening, Pat. We have been consistently talking about the worries for this secondary, and this joint practice against the Jets explained everything I needed to know. If we do not add a qualified veteran corner in some capacity at CB2, this football team will not win a lot of games. It's tough to claim proven guys at corner because they are cut for a reason, but I am hoping Shane can reach some sort of trade with another team and get a qualified outside corner to give us a competitive advantage. Maybe flip Aziz and a 5th-round pick for Greg Newsome or JC Horn. G-Men, I think you're thinking on the right track. Is Aziz a piece that you can move? That is a name that seems to be popping up a lot in scenarios. I know my good friend Seth Walder over at ESPN was the first person to kind of put his name out there. Definitely from Aziz's standpoint, it would probably be better at this point to go somewhere where he was going to get a new opportunity, a fresh start, now that Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau are here, and you have to imagine are not going to come off the field very much based on the investment the Giants have made there, though you do need to rotate guys and give them a breather every now and then. Is JC Horn a player that the Panthers are going to trade? That's a young, promising corner. He's had an injury history. But I think you're thinking on the right track, and you're also zeroing in on a position which we're bouncing around, but that's what I love doing it that way. However we do it, the priority positions of claiming and finding players on the trade block when it comes down to cut down day to reinforce the roster and to augment it and improve it for week 1. Corner is right there up at the top, no doubt about it. And listen, there were different coverages and different schemes happening on various big plays that occurred in that practice. It wasn't one guy. It wasn't one scheme. Obviously, Nick McLeod got beaten deep against Garrett Wilson in that one-on-one situation, man-to-man down the field. That was actually Darius Slayton's point one of the things he said in my interview with him actually earlier today, he felt like the Giants defense was giving the Jets various looks, right? Trying to practice playing man-to-man, trying to practice playing cover 2, cover 3, blitzing, sending different types of pressures, dropping in coverage, etc. And he felt like the Jets just kind of ran one coverage, drop deep, took away the deep part of the field and didn't really provide a lot of different looks. And so Slayton's point was, the Giants defense might have gotten beaten on some of those plays because they were willing to test out some looks in a competitive practice to see how guys would do in certain situations. Now, obviously, you can twist it however you want. The plays are made by one side and not the other when those things occur, obviously. So it is competitive periods. But, I see his point for sure. I guess what I would say, though, is that, G-Men right now, everyone in the secondary is probably playing one step above where ideally they would be on your team. So Deonte Banks is your number 1 right now. Ideally, he would be your number 2. Nick McLeod right now is your number 2. I think Nick can do that. I think ideally maybe he's your 3rd corner who is in and out, almost like a trying to think of him like if you look at your D line rotation and you think of who's the first D tackle up who's going to play 50% of the snaps, right? At corner, I would love for Nick McLeod to be that guy who's on the field a fair amount, more than he has been in the past, absolutely. But also maybe a guy that he has the versatility of going into the slot and also outside. And, so you have him, he's a valuable special teamer and he helps your defense. Then in slot, Drew Phillips is a rookie. He's had a good camp, but he did have the ankle. He's a physical player. I'm excited about him, frankly, as he continues to grow and develop. But putting a rookie in the slot to start is tough, right? Even Tyler Nubin right now at safety, I think he's going to be a good player. He looks like he's going to be a good player. By the way, extremely vocal on the field during that Jets practice at the end. We're standing there, they're in the red zone. He was the loudest Giant by far at a certain point during the red zone period there as the Jets were going in. But, a lot of youth there and a lot of need for reinforcements too. There are some good players that we just named. What you want to do, though, is change the depth chart by adding, like you said, a capable veteran, a capable person who can better slot everybody into the areas they need to go in. All right. Looks like we got some more super chats here. FYI, if you're not familiar, as Rich S is showing now, and as D Kit and others have shown us already in the chat, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker, and your comment or question will be elevated and answered first. So Tuto, Juicy Juice, D Kit, Rich, and now Rich with the neighbors comment have all purchased super chats to live in the chat to support the channel. And I really appreciate you guys doing that. If you're not going to purchase a super chat or super sticker while we are live, please hit the thumbs up, the like button there underneath this video. If you're enjoying the content that we are providing right now, live engagement, live likes do a lot for pushing this channel to the masses, telling other Giants fans, up next video, Talkin Ball live. Pat Leonard is live right now, right? This is how it happens. This is how the algorithm works. And this community that we have here, that we have going here is great, but the more the merrier. The more the merrier as we sit here to bring you my insights into the team, my inside reporting from being at the Giants every day, from working my sources, from working the phones, from talking to people around the league, and hopefully bringing you a full picture of what the Giants look like, what they're going to be, where they can get better, and what the NFL is looking like in general. Rich says, what's up, Pat? Neighbors will wear number 6. Book it. That would be my guess as well, Rich. I think you're probably on the right track there. Let's see. D-Kit says, problem number 1. Shane prioritized safety, slot corner, and tight end over D-line and boundary corner. I wonder whether Bowen played a role in that decision. Well, they all played a role in, they made the trade for Burns and they gave up that high second round pick. And that pick is where they would have gotten their corner. And so instead of getting the corner there, they end up taking a safety later with number 47. They knew corner was an issue. Obviously, they even drafted Banks the year before and they still had the need. And, they all played a part, though, in acknowledging that the Burns trade was going to possibly put them in this kind of position. So they did make their own bed here. Michael says, hello, Pat. Any chance the Giants trade Darius Slayton and a draft pick for a starting DB alongside Banks? Michael, Brian Daboll was raving, he was gassing up Slayton as much as we've heard him all camp today and saying that he was very, very consistent and has been. And I think that as much as Jalen Hyatt is a player who can help them in spots and is continuing to work hard to be the every down or, can't take him off the field playmaker that they want him to be and drafted him to be in the third round, I think it's very clear that after, Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton are the clear top two outside wide receivers on this team. I think that's very obvious based on their performance. And listen, Slayton is a veteran who has been available and productive through his NFL career and is a guy who has chemistry with Daniel Jones, right? So, I think that is all goes into the pot there. So I guess Slayton, I think, ends up being a trade target at this point. I think he gets traded if if the Giants start losing and the season is done, right? That could be the case. But it's interesting. I mean, the Giants are really, it depends on how their season starts. Because even if they start losing, then yes, maybe you're trading a player like that for draft picks before you lose them in free agency next year. But also, then we learn a lot at that juncture as far as how much pressure is on the GM as well as the head coach, because you trade, your second best receiver off the roster. Those are wave the white flag type moves, unless you're getting something serious back, for the current season. Michael, I think somebody mentioned Aziz earlier as a player. I mean, I don't know how much you're getting back for him. That's a player I think that you could move. I talked to somebody yesterday who was wondering if the Giants were trying to showcase Evan Neal for teams rather than intending to keep him. That was just speculation. I mean, that was not anybody with a team saying that that's what the Giants were doing. But those are that's the kind of stuff everybody's kind of curious about looking at and looking for at this moment. Like, for example, Neal looks like, based on practice, he looks like he's going to start at right tackle in this preseason finale where the Giants are going to play their backups. And so if he plays a half or whatever it is at right tackle in this game, does that reinforce for the Giants that he can do it for them? Or do they look around and see if they can get something for a player who hasn't been an asset recently at all to them, but turns out to be, right? That'll be interesting to see. Candyman says, hey, Pat, never been so down about an upcoming season. People are saying we don't have as much cap space as reported. Can you shed light on that? Yeah, let's go to the updated database, Candyman, because, well, I was only reacting the other day. Field Yates reported when he reported Andrew Thomas's restructure, he reported that the Giants had almost 18 million of cap space. And at the time, that was not accurate. So at the moment, they have $13 million in cap space, according to the NFL Players Association database. So that is the official database. And as of right now, 9:30 p.m., August 22nd, 2024, the Giants have $13 million in cap space. Now, keep in mind that is cap space that they not only have to acquire players now, right? But also you need to have cap space to be able to operate throughout the season. So, you're not looking to spend it all at the moment, and you're not looking to be where the Giants have been in seasons past when Shane came in and they were trying to clean up the cap. They were so tight against the cap. They were literally, releasing guys off of the practice squad and, bringing them back 5 days later to save some money. I mean, it was crazy. D says, Pat, we don't look ready for week 1. A little help, please. I feel like what I thought this team was going to look like so far has happened. We don't know, obviously, until the results start occurring, until the games start counting, whether or not, what the 4-quarter games are going to look like there. Like, for example, if you spin ahead to week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings, right now, it looks like, you'd have to be concerned about the Giants defense in general. The run defense is something I've been skeptical of through the summer. Recently, it has not reared its head as badly, down to down as necessarily I would have expected. But once the regular season comes, like if Aaron Jones carries the ball 15 times, plus you have Justin Jefferson out there, to me, you're looking at a game where if the Giants defense isn't forcing a couple turnovers off Sam Darnold, it's going to be a long day. Conversely, if they can force Darnold into mistakes, and we all know Darnold tends to make mistakes, that's how you stay in and win a game like that, right? And then on the other side, is the Giants offensive line and is their offense equipped to handle Brian Flores's blitz heavy scheme, and that attack coming from now a defensive coordinator who's under fire from his former quarterback in Miami and Tua Tagovailoa. A really interesting matchup coming there for the Vikings and the Giants. But to your point, D-Kit, right now there are clear areas of the roster, key areas that are going to be impossible to conceal once week 1 gets here, that are something that the Giants front office is going to need to try to address here, and that Shane Bowen on defense and Brian Daboll on offense are going to have to address from a game plan standpoint. Even if everyone was healthy, there would still be massive holes on this roster, D-Kid says. Yeah, so one of the reasons, I haven't made my final predictions for the season yet, but when the schedule came out, I looked at it, right? I saw some games I thought maybe looked favorable, but a lot that I didn't think did. And then some swing games, a lot of them I went the other way. One of the reasons is because I believe that this roster has to stay, all of the top players on this roster have to be healthy for the Giants to compete, is the way I see it. And if they lose 1 or 2 of their key top players to injury, then that's where the worst case scenario comes in. I just don't think they're deep enough and they don't have enough high-end talent outside of a handful of guys where they would be able to survive that. But we've seen in years past, the Giants have really struggled with keeping guys healthy, which is why I think, picking the under and even more makes a lot of sense. Danny Duds says Daniel Jones shouldn't have been given that contract. Who are they bidding against? That's a question many have asked. Too many fans are still in denial. Only year 6. Jets went through Darnold and Wilson in that span. We are still stuck with our bad quarterback year 6. Okay. Give me an assessment of JMS right now. Did he play poorly against the Jets? I did not come away feeling like JMS played poorly. I do feel like one thing Darius Slayton said to me was he said he thought the Giants ran the ball well. I did not think that, we're just talking about the joint practice against the Jets. I felt like it was kind of like we've seen all camp. They hit 1 or 2 here or there for, 5 or 6 yards or some good gains or marginal gains. But then I felt like there were several that were stopped short, for nothing, no gain, back to the line of scrimmage, -1 or 1 yard. You guys saw it in the Houston Texans game. We saw 10 carries for 20 yards there. Devin Singletary, he did have the 10-yard run, but a lot of the other runs were, a lot of work for very little. And that's what we've seen so far. That's not just JMS. That's the whole line of scrimmage. That's the whole offensive line that's moving the line of scrimmage and getting Devin Singletary, giving him some space, getting Tyrone Tracy downhill, a guy who's back at practice now. I think JMS also did full work there, D-Kit, which was good to see. He did full work in that practice against the Jets. I will say this, at this final practice before the Jets preseason game, when they first lined up with the offensive line, just in the back as DeVito was going through certain play calls. They weren't actually running them. John Michael Schmitz was at center with the backups at first. And so there was a part of me, it was Josh Azudu left tackle. I think it was Jake Kubis left guard, John Michael Schmitz center, Jalen Mayfield right guard. And then at first it was Jermaine Illuminor right tackle, and then it was Evan Neal in there. And so there was a part of me wondering whether John Michael Schmitz might actually get a little bit more time to get a little bit more game run in this preseason finale. Because remember, he played 15 snaps against the Texans and then they took him out. So I think it's possible that he might get a little bit of run at the start of this game. But then when they ran the 11-on-11 team period, he was not snapping to Tommy DeVito there. That was Austin Schlottman. So we'll see. We'll see if I was seeing things correctly there or not. That might have just been them trying to make sure that they were running it correctly at first, getting the play call in to DeVito to get him kind of acclimated. But seems like possible that because JMS had the shoulder and then was on the snap count in Houston, maybe he plays a little in this game. But we'll see. That's me kind of reading the tea leaves of how I watch practice and knowing how they practice. Chronicle says, honestly, Pat, at this point, if we don't sign someone like a Xavier Howard or someone who has a lot of starting experience to play opposite Deontay Banks, I don't know if this team will be very competitive. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to tell you I told you so, but you can definitely see that the issues that we've been, and, I think you guys saw it as well as I did. And, the issues that we identified early that could be serious concerns are rearing their heads in these competitive periods. Now, I talked to Dexter Lawrence today about the red zone defense, because if you remember the first season of Martindale's defense here, their two key strengths were third down and red zone. And so that was a major difference from what had been here before. Like Pat Graham's defense had some good times, but at the end, do you remember, especially like the 2-minute drives at the end of halves? So Martindale's defense was able to kind of cut down on that. They weren't surrendering points in those situations. Third down, they were getting off the field more often. And then they were not giving up touchdowns in a lot of key situations. They were forcing opponents to settle for field goals. So Dexter Lawrence was saying, we call it, we're not letting them in the house. We're protecting our house. He batted the ball down against the Texans in the red zone to force a turnover on downs there. So, the glass half full look is that so far, what you see on the defensive side of the ball is guys who are, while they're bending, they are not breaking, is so far what we've seen in a lot of these situations. Now, you go to the joint practice against the Jets, obviously, Aaron Rodgers made it a little bit more difficult on them. They did have a situation. There was one play where Brian Burns got a sack, and then Aaron Rodgers continued through it, and people called it a touchdown pass, but it was really a Brian Burns sack, and that was in the red zone. Also, on the final touchdown pass at the end of the 2-minute drive from Rodgers to Lazard, Brian Burns did get free at the end of that play, and you could argue was about to absolutely smoke Aaron Rodgers if it was a real game and you were allowed to tackle. So, we have seen both in the Houston game and in that joint practice in some of the red zone situations, we have seen their pass rush and their defense kind of hold in some of those situations. And I think that's what you have to hang your hat on, is you're going to see them give up yards. You're going to see them give up big plays, but can they keep opponents out of the end zone? And if they can, ultimately they're doing their job. I know that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear that the defense is going to be a shutdown defense, but obviously that's not what it looks like right now. Barb says, hoping since Daniel Jones had that great game against the Vikings, that will give him some sort of confidence and we'll get off to a good start. Yeah, listen, the Vikings are a lot like the Giants, where they have some talent, but they're not projected to be a great team. They have flaws. This is not going to be their year. They're two teams that are not expected to finish well in their own divisions, that have strengths and some top high-end players and also flaws and weaknesses. So, it's an opportunity for the Giants is what it is. There would have been a lot of worse opponents to open against. And even, you think about, just the quarterback situation. I think when you have to remember this, the Giants won't play CJ Stroud and Aaron Rodgers every week. So, I think there could be very easily, there could be a situation where if they're playing against, a lower level quarterback, suddenly they will look a lot better. Their defense will not be maybe dissected or tricked as easily as it would with a CJ Stroud or Aaron Rodgers being able to read the field, change the play call like Rodgers does, right? So you do remember that when it comes to what the matchups are. Like, for example, Jaden Daniels, really good quarterback, right, from LSU, comes in as a rookie. Washington's going to start him. Now, despite being talented, though, he's a rookie behind a bad offensive line in Washington, and you played that team twice. So, that player might make plays on you, but also you should have a chance to force him into mistakes and limit the damage because he's not a top 10 quarterback, and you should be able to handle that. Now, we'll see that, that'll reflect on Shane Bowen and the defensive coaching as well, because I know this, you could almost book it in that first season that Wink was here with the Giants defense. When they faced a lower level quarterback, like the Giants were in total control of the game. And then obviously you saw them beat Rodgers and the Packers in London, right? So they could beat some good quarterbacks too. They beat Lamar Jackson when he came to MetLife. So it wasn't just the lower level quarterbacks, but you could basically book it if they were playing a bad quarterback for the most part. Joey B, good to see you. Hey, Pat, what's up with JMS? Is he becoming a bust? Joey, JMS, not a bust, but I think I would put him in the category with essentially most of Shane's draft picks. And what I mean by that is he's a guy with pedigree. He's a guy who's been thrust into a big spot early, and he's someone they're going to count on, and who, I mean, in his case, played a lot of football at a high level at Minnesota in the Big Ten, right? All of that said, in that group of Joe Shane draft picks, he hasn't reached the potential they drafted him at yet. And he's only played one season, right? He's only had one rookie year. But I think it's more of like we need to see more situation, and he knows it, everybody knows it, rather than this guy's a bust. But Joey, I will say they like John Michael, but I believe he is like a lot of other positions on the team. They want to have a way of insurance behind him if it doesn't work out. So that's why I think, not that I'm not saying, hey, they're going to bench John Michelson. That's not what I'm saying. What I mean, though, is that they are so intently trying different guys throughout training camp at center, seeing what their flex is, from Greg Van Roten when he came in as a center when John Michael Schmitz was out. John Runyon Jr. has center flex. Austin Schlottman's on the roster at the moment, right? Jake Kubis is somebody they've had snapping as well on the side. So, to me, I think they're trying to be prepared if he doesn't turn into a dominant center, if he doesn't hold his own. So, that's something that they're preparing for, worst case scenario, but hoping they never get to, is the way I see it. Juicy Juice, thanks again for that super chat. Patrick, what's going on? Great to see you. A pat to a pat. Appreciate you. Joey B says, I'm kind of depressed about this season. I try to be optimistic, but this is sad. If we have a horrible season, I think I may give up my season tickets. Wow. I can't believe it, Joey B. It's just way too much money to watch this year in and year out. Man, Joey B, this might end up being the comment of the chat. Joey B saying that he might give up his season tickets if it's another horrible year. I understand why you're saying that, Joey, and here's what I think. I think it's going to sting in a lot of ways if in the 100th season, when the Giants are celebrating their history and pulling out all the stops to do so, that fanfare is negated or canceled out by bad results and poor football and poor roster management and, run down the list. I could understand as a fan why that would feel like overbearing and too much, for sure. So hang in there, Joey. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Dr. Garrett says, good evening, Pat. Are any of our starters supposed to play against the Jets? From what like I said, from what I observed, looks like I don't know if John Michael's going to play or not. It looked like maybe he'll get a little bit of run early just to continue to get his feet wet, get those reps. It looks like most of the starters are sitting. The receivers, the receiving group that looks like it's going to play, like the starters, I think are going to be Allen Robinson, Isaiah Hodgins, and either Isaiah McKenzie or Ayir Asante. And then, as you can kind of fill in the blanks there, obviously some tight ends like a Chris Manhertz maybe needs to play just because, you need tight ends on the field and they don't have a ton of them who are available and healthy to do that. Or you just don't have an unlimited amount on your roster either. You know what I mean? So you'll see guys pop up here and there who are technically starters doing that. I think you guys probably saw my injury updates on X, but essentially I will go through them really quickly here. And then I'll answer some more questions, but I want to also tell you my 53-man projection so that we can react to that. So let's see. Gary Gaston says, "Yo, Pat, what's good? You got people from the beat jumping in." Who's in here from the beat, Gary? Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Who else is in here? We got a lot of people in the chat tonight. Love it. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says Darius Slayton brings a valuable perspective. Always. Man, the day that he's traded or leaves and signs elsewhere is going to be a sad day because Darius is a pleasure to talk to and to have around the Giants team. So here are the players on the side today: Drew Lock, Cordell Flott, Trey Herndon, Javarius Owens, Micah McFadden, Matt Adams, Deontay Johnson, Marcus McKeithen, and Lawrence Cager. And then guys who I did not see who we know are out are Gunnar Olszewski and the safety Jonathan Sutherland. John Runyon Jr. was in uniform, which was new, but was also on the side. All right, let's see. Timothy says, "Hey, Pat, should the Giants trade Darius Slayton and a third rounder to the Panthers for J.C. Horn?" I mean, I just don't, I think Slayton has proven that he's a guy that they need on their offense is the way I look at it. Now, they might be desperate enough that they need to, use an asset like that to go and get a corner, but I don't think that they would be improving their offense by getting rid of Darius Slayton. I think they would be robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. Joey B wants Horn and Howard. Xavier Howard apparently has, he has some off-field issues. I'm sure you guys saw them kind of pop up, some like reports and rumors in the summer. But I know I talked to Jeremy Fowler about that when we did our podcast a couple weeks ago or about a month ago, and he said he had some off-field stuff. He didn't see that being an issue, being a possibility. So, until I hear differently, that's where I'll stand there. Garrett says, "Pat, I think the trolling on Daniel Jones is justified. No team in the league is getting less out of the contract they gave their quarterback than us." Yeah, you hate to say that out loud, but obviously we all know that the Giants need more. Let's see. Peter, sorry I missed your super chat there. Let's get to that. He says, "Pat, we are super thin at inside linebacker. Any ideas?" So, Peter, I think, thanks for the super chat. I think when you look at inside linebacker, Deontay Johnson's a player I like. Now, he is out of the boot, even though he's still on the side. The boot was no longer on his left foot today. That was good to see. I still don't think he's like imminently close, but that's encouraging, at least that he's out of the boot. I mean, they have Isaiah Simmons, who gives them some flexibility to go from DB to linebacker, but he's obviously a guy who, you have to play in certain spots and be smart about where you use him. I mean, that's definitely a position where if Micah McFadden is out and Deontay Johnson is out, I think it's a serious concern. Now both of those players obviously have limitations, but having them still is a major upgrade over what is behind them. And so McFadden, week one is a question mark. It's not definite he's out. He was standing outside today, which was at least a little bit of progress, but was barely doing anything. If anything, Matt Adams looked like he was doing more than most, walking around, lifting, putting some stress on his body. So, I do think that's a position of need. When I look at their roster and I say, where are they most desperate? I think corner and interior D line, even on defense, still rise above inside linebacker as far as how much of a need there is. But I think inside linebacker is just as much of a concern from a depth standpoint. Pat behind Bobby, especially if those injuries are lingering as the Minnesota game approaches, for sure. That's a position, Peter, where guys that you're getting on the market at the moment usually are closer to special teams backups than they are to certifiable starters. So again, like everybody here is kind of creating scenarios for acquiring a corner, right? So like if you were going to acquire a significant contributing inside linebacker, that's more likely looking like a trade. And frankly, I know Joe Shane paid Bobby Okereke and signed him, but also from a positional value standpoint, investing a significant resources in a second inside linebacker would be a little bit, I don't know if surprising is the word, but it would not be the first thing I would expect Joe Shane to do. But like we've talked about, Shane Bowen does prioritize that position in his defense. And now, of course, having Bobby there, as long as you have Bobby there, you have a guy who you feel like is a top end linebacker to kind of command the middle of the defense there. So you do have him. But I do think I think that even though they have a lot of injuries, Deontay Johnson is my pick for somebody I would like to see play a lot early on in the season and see if he can do it. Him and Micah McFadden rotating in and out. That's what I would like to see. So let me tell you guys real quick what my 53 projection is as of this moment. And this is, of course, remember, my 53-man roster here and now that I give you here on August 22nd, here on about 10 o'clock Eastern time in the evening. This is the roster that I think will exist after 4 p.m. Tuesday. But then remember, the Giants will then go and they might make a trade and want somebody from this group off of the roster. They might make 6 waiver claims and then have to cut 6 more of these guys on Wednesday to make room for those waiver claims. So this doesn't mean these guys are all going to be on the team in week 1. This is just how I see it looking next week, Tuesday at 4:01. So this is, of course, an educated guess. We're still days away. Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito at quarterback, 3 QBs. Not something that I would do. Not something that I even foresaw, a week and a half ago. I think Drew Lock's injury and the fact that even the Giants may need a reason to try to keep fans in the seats if the season doesn't start well enough at quarterback. Tommy DeVito gives you that, at least early on. 3 running backs, Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and Eric Gray. Wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Allen Robinson, Miles Boykin, and Isaiah McKenzie. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 receivers. Now, the reason I'm going 7 receivers here and those names, so there's a new rule. You can put up to 2 players on injured reserve prior to this cut down and carry them over and bring them back off IR. That's a new rule this year. So my 2, okay, and this is, again, educated guessing. So that would make 55 total players, 53 plus the 2 IR guys. My 2 at the moment are Lawrence Cager, the tight end, and Gunnar Olszewski, the punt returner / wide receiver. So if those 2 guys end up being the carryover IR guys, then you're keeping 1 more receiver here than you would otherwise if Gunnar was healthy. That's how I see it. At tight end, of course, so Cager being the IR guy, I have Manhertz, Theo Johnson, and Daniel Bellinger, and then Jacob Johnson as a fullback as well. Something might shake out there if Johnson can prove his worth and he's giving them what they need as far as blocking in the body that they're adding to their backfield there with that group. But as of this moment, that's how I see it. Offensive line, we got Andrew Thomas, John Runyon Jr., John Michael Schmitz, Greg Van Roten, Jermaine Illuminor, Aaron Stinney, Jake Kubis, Evan Neal, and Josh Izudu. I left Austin Schlottman, the backup center, off. He has a $500,000 guarantee. Now, this is something that I'm curious to see how this plays out. Kubis seems like a player they really like, and I'm not. Now, sometimes you overvalue young players and whether they're going to pass through waivers. So in other words, what I mean by that is Kubis looks like he's a good developmental player. If the Giants cut him, that doesn't mean that 5 teams are going to put a claim in on him. You might cut a player like that and easily get him through waivers because other teams don't need a developmental guard who probably isn't going to play much early on, right? So that could happen. That could be the case that they pass him through waivers and put him on the practice squad. But I am just going off of, I think they like that player. And if Neal is on the team, and then Izudu is a guy who's a draft pick who, even though I think if he wasn't a draft pick, he would be cut, but also the Giants don't have a swing tackle. And, Josh Miles has had a good camp, I think. So that's another tackle to think about, who I like, but that's a position on the waiver wire. Other teams, like a team like the Eagles, who have a glut of tackles, let's say, or a lot of offensive linemen, if they're cutting a tackle off of that group, is that a team that you poach from? Tyree Phillips, who's now back to working out and, on the verge of taking visits. If you're bringing in Tyree Phillips and he can end up coming in and helping you, does that sidle somebody else in that room out? Because you think about it, the offensive line room I just kept there. You have your starting 2 tackles, Thomas and Illuminor, and then behind that, the only other tackles are Neal and Izudu. That does not make me feel, like I'm locking down those positions. I would feel much better with better depth there. So I guess the best way to put that to kind of put a bow on that is I don't think the offensive line room is done when we get to Tuesday at 4 p.m. Defensive line, Dexter Lawrence, Nacho, so Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Elijah Chapman, and DJ Davidson. After that, and Jordan Riley I put on there, so 5. This is a room where, to me, there is nobody who is, other than Chapman, who is obviously an encouraging young player, behind Lawrence and Nacho and Chapman, like nobody else to me stands out as a guy that I have to have on my roster. But obviously you do have to have depth. Davidson concerns me. I mean, if you guys saw that clip of Dane Belton kind of getting walloped by, I think it was Breece Hall on a run up the middle, you saw DJ Davidson just getting washed out across the line of scrimmage there. Not a player who I have a ton of confidence in until he shows me that he deserves it. But we'll see. So I have him on the roster, and he's pretty high up the depth chart right now, honestly. Edge rusher, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Boogie Basham, Azeez Ojulari. Obviously, you guys have named Azeez Ojulari as a guy to watch maybe in a trade. We'll see what happens there. The Giants typically have not kept a lot of edges on their roster, even their game day rosters, let alone their 53. So, I have those 4. And then inside linebacker, a lot of injuries here, obviously, but Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden, Deontay Johnson, Carter Coughlin, Darius Muasau, Matt Adams, and I threw Isaiah Simmons in there, obviously, DB/linebacker. Corner, Deontay Banks, Cordell Flott, Nick McLeod, Drew Phillips, Trey Hawkins. Safety, Jason Pinnock, Tyler Nubin, Dane Belton, and the special teamers, Graham Gano, Jamie Gillen, and Casey Kreider. So that is my way too early roster 53-man prediction of what it will look like Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. But like I said, that'll just be only the beginning too, right? Because that's not final cuts. That's essentially first cuts, if that makes sense. Let's see. D-Kid says, the one thing Darius didn't say was that Jones is really good. Well, no, Darius would say that if I asked him that. I mean, he said that enough that I promise you, like he was answering the questions I was asking him, so that was not him talking around anything there. Joe says that the Giants are the worst rated team on Madden. The Panthers are better. Oh boy. Luann says, I'm tired of the bashing of DJ. He doesn't need this crap in his head. He has enough pressure on him. DJ will shut a lot of people up, especially the sports media on TV. Isn't it wild how many people are coming after him? I mean, people on shows that they've probably never even talked about the Giants. Suddenly it's like leading the segments. Tuto says, Joey, our next test is against my former club who picked me first round, but I blew my left knee out on the second test. They dumped me to a different club for pennies, but after my recovery, I've been a top 10 defender. Tuto, show them what they're missing. Show them what they're missing. Chris D says, stop whining about the Daniel Jones contract. After the 22 season, it was a logical conclusion with few real options. I think it was his franchise tag situation, but I understand how they got there. D Kit says he's been drinking Boom Chaga. It's good and definitely gives you a little extra. Yeah, guys, please try out that Boom Chaga. That is actually, I always talk about, hey, purchase a super chat or a super sticker to support the channel. Buying a bag of Boom Chaga would be the number one way right now to support the Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard podcast, because that shows the sponsor that the advertisements and the presence on here results in sales. And that is the number one way to continue to kind of build what we're doing here. And so if you give it a try, I'll be very grateful. You go to boomchaga.com, go to subscribe and save, and type in Talkin Ball 25 or use that QR code up there. Once you subscribe and buy the bag for that big discount, you can then cancel your subscription. You're not locked in. That's just the way that they track the purchases coming from the Talkin Ballers over to Boom Chaga. D-Kit, thanks for drinking Boom. Thanks for purchasing Boom. And thanks for supporting us. I thank you enough already, but, I really do appreciate it. Let's see. Joey B. Yeah, Tudo, give us the name of that team and everything on social so we can follow. Let's relax on Rodgers, JFed says. The last time he played a real game against the Giants, he lost. That's the trash talk we like to see. Also, the guy who made the play at the end to strip the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hand was O'Shane Zimenez. Dr. Garrett says, I get that Daniel Jones could win some games with a good roster around him, but the truth is he doesn't make anyone better around him. We don't have the guy, so keeping my expectations very low. Bob Abraham says DeVito will do well in this game because he will run on them. You better believe it. Jay Mazzella likes Luann's support of Daniel Jones and the G-Men. Luann says, I watched that stupid sports show with Shady McCoy. I hate that guy. He's constantly calling Daniel Jones trash. D-Kit says, the issue with Jones is that he's predictable and can be fooled too easily. He hasn't really progressed. Yeah, it's really just, and listen, he's not the only this is the thing. He's not the only quarterback who does this, but the mistakes he's making have been the same mistakes. The mistakes he's making have been the same mistakes. Tuto says that for his team, his rugby team, they're not allowed on any social media platforms whatsoever due to high volume of hyenas, crimes by crazy fans towards the players and their families. Hey, this is NFL. This would help some of these NFL players, right? Like Evan Neal would have benefited from being kept off social media last year. Good example. Though we know Tuto can handle it. Chris D says, do you know what the biggest problem with Sauce Gardner is? He's a Jet. Yeah, the Giants apparently, not apparently. The Giants wanted Sauce in that draft. Think they looked into trying to move up to possibly get him. Ultimately did not, of course, but would have been nice to have that player. D-Kid says, I can't remember when a player has been so openly criticized by other players. Do you think the hate would have been so bad if Saquon also got paid? No, I think it would be a little bit different. I think it would be different. I think that's part of it. That's anecdotal, talking to some people about it, Giant Topic, what's going on? Great to see you. Let's see. JDJ says, Pat, unfortunately, even winning won't change the DJ narrative. When the team played well a few years back and made the playoffs, DJ still wasn't seen as a good quarterback and got little credit. Well, JDJ, I will say this. The game he had against the Colts that year late in the season and the game he had against Minnesota in the playoff game, I think everybody agreed he played his butt off and looked great and played like a really good quarterback. You know, there were players calling him elite in the locker room afterwards. I think Saquon Barkley used that word. You know, Daniel Jones was at that time considered like a guy who was on the rise. Now, JDJ, also in fairness, that season, it was pretty transparent that the Giants were coaching around his weaknesses, using his legs, kind of limiting what he was doing with his arm, especially down the field, and protecting him a little bit, trying to unlock him in certain ways that hadn't been done as effectively previously. But it was still, this is why. So even though I thought there were other coaches who, you know, should have won coach of the year because they were running through the league or barely losing any games and doing great jobs with their teams. Part of the reason Brian Daboll won coach of the year is because he took a team, and he and Wink Martindale took a team that didn't have a lot to it. And really, they didn't even think they were going to do much winning. And they just crafted these game plans and worked around, you know, what wasn't working and what weaknesses weren't working in order to have that 6-1 start and just kind of charge out and catch people by surprise. And that was enough, obviously, to sneak into the playoffs there. And so, you know, that was that Daboll got coach of the year in part because of what people knew that he had done creatively with Daniel Jones, if that makes sense. But I do think winning, JDJ, like, because also remember that year, yes, they did some winning. I think that Daniel Jones got plenty of credit for the Minnesota game and for the end of the year with that Indianapolis game, running over Bobby Okereke in the end zone when he was with the Colts. Remember that? I think he got credit for that point. I also think, though, that it was well known at that point that the only team luckier that year than the Giants was the Vikings team they then played and beat in the playoffs. The Vikings defense was terrible. And then when the Giants played a real team the next week in Philly, they got absolutely destroyed. Like, it wasn't even a game. The game was over 2 drives into the game. So I think, you know, I guess what I'm saying is I think he got the appropriate credit, but I think the context of it all was understood by people as well, is my point. Doug says, Pat, what did you think about Daboll citing the explosive play stats? That seemed calculated and prepared. I've been around long enough now to know that he walked up to that podium armed with that, ready to rock and roll. I make of that he is, while the Giants have made clear they're trying to push the ball down the field more, and they've made no secret of that. Remember, Brian Daboll said that they were putting an emphasis on it in the Houston game. Coming off of the Jets practice where they didn't push the ball downfield at all, except for that attempt for Neighbors that he dropped in the 2-minute period. I viewed that as Brian Daboll coming armed with a stat that he felt suggested it's not like everyone's making these plays all the time and we aren't. This is not a normal thing that happens, that it's, you know, hitting those shot plays down the field to that magnitude, that far down the field. I think what did he say, past 40 yards? He was ready to contextualize in a way that he felt was going to represent the Giants offense better with a stat that supported it. I've covered many coaches. I've covered different sports. I've covered the NFL for a long time. And that was how I viewed that, because I've seen it before. Bo Nix killing it for Sean Payton's offense. Giants could have traded back and had him. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Any of those guys drafted high, you know, behind the Giants would be interesting to watch. Obviously, for this year, they dodged a bullet with J.J. McCarthy with the knee. But interesting to watch what happens with Michael Penix Jr. Interesting to watch what happens with Bo Nix there for sure in the first round. I think it's more about media attention and piling on, says Jay Mazzella, as far as players jumping on the DJ slander wagon. These guys are telling the media what they want to hear, or the question would not be asked. Yeah, that there's something to that. I definitely viewed Patrick Peterson's comments about Daniel Jones like that. Like they came completely out of left field. By the way, did you guys see what Darius Slayton told me about Patrick Peterson? That quote was amazing. Hold on, I have to read it to you. So we've talked about that before. Like Slayton and I have talked about Patrick Peterson ripping Daniel Jones before, but Slayton brought it up again. He said, when Patrick Peterson said the thing a couple of months ago in the offseason, it was like, you can say that, but we played him twice. Once they gave up a playoff record, and the first time we didn't lose because we couldn't score. So 2 times you had a chance to play somebody that you allegedly say couldn't do such and so forth, and then went out there and twice had a chance to stop them, and they went out and did it. At some point, it's like you're full of shit. Either you're full of crap or you don't know what you're talking about. One of the two. Slayton also said Peterson's diss of Jones was, quote, like a boxer talking about this guy doesn't have any punching power. And then you get in there and he knocks you out twice. You're going to keep saying he has no punching power, but you've been to sleep twice. It makes no sense. It's illogical. Slay. Big play Slay, bringing it. All right, let's see. I think players around the league and also on the Giants view Jones's contract as the worst example of paying a guy who hasn't been an impact player and slighting another who clearly deserved it more. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree that it is connected to both the Daniel Jones paid and Saquon Barkley not. I do agree with that. Yeah, D Kid says, are they going to keep 9 or 10 offensive linemen? That's a good question because, like I said, they've been looking at the flex of a lot of these linemen, these interior linemen at the center position is one thing that we've seen. But also, they did give Schlottman, $500K guaranteed, and he has been their second string center. And so you look at that and you say, well, are they going to end up keeping that true center, or are they going to feel like they have some flexibility there when it comes to a guard who can play center and they don't have to burn an extra roster spot to keep a true center who doesn't help them at left or right guard, right? Let's see. Do you think Daniel Jones changes his jersey number? No indication of that, Trauma. Haven't heard that. Chronicle says, did Allen Robinson try Estate 98? Now, I have to bring him the bottle still. I'm bringing it in next time we are at the facility. Actually, that might even be the game on Saturday. I'll probably bring it early next week and give it to him then. But looking forward to hearing his review of Estate 98. Pat, are you as confused as I am as to how this roster could be so thin and full of holes after 3 off seasons of the current regime? Can you give me insight into what you think the plan is? I think, D, really what it comes down to is the draft picks haven't blossomed and quote unquote hit, to the point where you can sit there right now and say, look at all these core players that we've gotten in the draft, right? I think that's part of the issue there. I mean, you look at the Joe Shane 3 drafts now, right? Let's look at the Joe Shane 3 drafts. You have in 2022, you have Kayvon Thibodeau, who is a player who has obviously had some ups, but you want to see him put it all together. Evan Neal, who's first round pick, number 7 overall, has been a whiff so far. Wan'Dale Robinson, who you see some flashes, you hope that he stays healthy and you want to see more. A second round pick, 43rd overall pick. Josh Azudu hasn't been what they needed as a 3rd round pick. Cordell Flott has struggled to stay healthy, even though we've seen flashes when he has played. Daniel Bellinger as a tight end he was drafted in the 4th round, and that seems appropriate. Dane Belton, same could be a good, I think, 3rd safety. I think that's his probably ceiling. Micah McFadden, 5th round pick at linebacker, a guy that you feel good about that pick, but obviously, again, another player who, if you ask him to do more than what is his skill set, he can be exposed in certain spots. Let's see. After McFadden, you have DJ Davidson, who a 5th round pick, who to me underwhelming. Marcus McKeithen, 5th-round pick, who looks like he's going to end up being cut here. Obviously, being injured now does not help him being on the side. And Darian Beavers, a late-round linebacker, who obviously got hurt early on, and it's been hard for him to come back and show the same promise that he showed when he first got here as a rookie before that injury, right? Then you go to the 2023 draft, and you have Deonte Banks, who looks like a good player. Definitely at this moment, I think more of a number 2 than a number 1, but I love Deonte Banks. I love Tay Banks' game, and I think he will continue to develop. So I do like that pick. John Michael Schmitz, a guy who you need to see more from as a second rounder. He knows it. Everybody knows it. Jalen Hyatt, a 3rd rounder that the Giants felt was a steal. Is he limited to the big play guy who you can't keep on the field as much as you would like? Because if he is, then the league in general was right in that sense of, watching him fall down the board. Because obviously to win the Biletnikoff and then fall to the 3rd round is very unusual. Hyatt, by the way, great kid, great guy. I like him a lot. I'm rooting for him to succeed. We know he had a 100-yard game last year, so that's something, of course, to build on in a big way. So, but of course, still looking for more. Eric Gray, again, another player, looking for him to, take the next step. Wasn't what you needed him to be last year. You had him out of position as a returner. Now, can he turn it on after having a good preseason start against Detroit? You hope so, but you need to see it. Trey Hawkins, corner, great camp as a rookie. Didn't get it done in games. Can he do it when it counts now? Jordan Riley, Javarius Owens, 7th rounders who were drafted there. And, Riley, maybe has a chance, but both guys who were drafted late and are, haven't tracked any higher than that for the most part. And then this year, Neighbors looks very good. Looks like he could be a superstar, 6th overall, of course. And then Tyler Nubin, I think there's a lot to like, but you need to see him play more football as a guy who missed early part of camp. So might take him a little bit into the regular season to get his feet under him there. And then Drew Phillips battled an ankle. He's back. Is at an encouraging camp. We'll see. Theo Johnson's had a lot of drops lately. I do think is going to factor in significantly into the Giants offense this season. But asking a lot of the rookie 4th-round pick out of Penn State. Tyrone Tracy's been intriguing out of Purdue. Goal line back, guy who's built bigger, knows how to fall forward, it appears. I hope, early on in camp, there were a couple of ball security issues at times. We haven't seen it rear its head lately. Hopefully it doesn't again. And then a late round linebacker, Darius Muasau, who probably tracks as a special team backup type. So, D-Kit, you just prompted me to go through the whole draft, the whole draft kind of history of Joe Schoen. But I did that for a reason, because you asked, why is this roster so thin and full of holes? And it's because essentially the plan that Joe Schoen articulated when he came here is we're going to build through the draft and supplement through free agency. And if you're not building well with player hits in the draft, that's how your roster ends up in this type of spot. John Kirk says, any chance Turbo makes the 53 or even the practice squad? Yeah, I think there's a chance Turbo makes the 53. Daboll seemed to be playing down Turbo as an all-around player when I asked him about it last week. I definitely think if he gets cut, the idea would be for him to be cut and put on the practice squad and kept in the building. It would not be to cut him and let him go. At least that's how I feel right now. I think he's had too strong of a camp to ignore with the ball in his hands. So yeah, I think if he does get cut, I think he would be a guy that they would have on the practice squad. Michael says, good to hear Nubin is vocal. Love the kid. Yeah, that was one thing I noticed on the field. Also, I know we know this already, guys, but, like a day against the Jets where Neighbors wasn't catching balls left and right, like Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be the PPR king of the Giants. Even if it's 7 catches for 25 yards, sometimes he's going to catch a lot of short catch and run opportunities. He is very much a significant factor in their offense. D-Kid says the Giants should trade Hyatt. Interesting. I doubt that would happen. That's an interesting point though, D-Kit. Like try to try to sell high on the like potential and except he's not a problem like internally. Like Kadarius Toney got traded in his second NFL season after being a first round pick. I mean, trading a third rounder who you still view as a guy that you're developing and working into something more, that would be tough sell. What freedom do you think Jones has to change a play or a route? Not talking about check with me plays, but a true ability to read what's happening pre-snap and change things up. Well, if you remember last year at the goal line, Daboll gave Tyrod Taylor a play, with like basically two calls in it. So he had a chance, he had an opportunity to either stay with the first call or check out of it. And if you check out of it, everybody knows what you're checking to that second play call. And so, that's more of what they have in the offense, D, rather than completely change it up. He does have some freedom at the line, though, but I view this more as Brian Daboll with his hands on the strings. Is it Jones' responsibility to set the protections, or is it on JMS? Uh, JMS, I believe. JMS, I believe. And that was a part of the reason they drafted him was his experience, as running an offense in the Big Ten and his intelligence. Jay Farries checks in with $10 super chat. Thank you, Jay. He says, Pat, Joe Shane seems to love the attention and gone Hollywood on Hard Knocks. Truth be told, who has he drafted who would be a tier 1 free agent today? He brought in the whole DB room too. No doubt. 100%, Jay. I think, your point about the drafts and tier 1 players and needing that, the one guy who looks like who you could say right now might be his Neighbors. Obviously it's very early. But it looks like he could be that type of guy. So that would be my answer. As far as going Hollywood, I like that the Giants were so transparent with Hard Knocks. Joe Shane was featured a lot in it, was certainly the quote unquote star of the show as far as like being featured most prominently, being the main character essentially. I do think there were times where he did not come off great, where the process didn't come off great. I think we've kind of dissected how on Hard Knocks, the Giants internally are an operation where at least this offseason, you could talk about there were some people with good ideas, but they weren't all necessarily being heard or heeded. In the end, I think they knew what they had to go do at quarterback and they looked into it and then they just never actually made it happen. And so just like we were talking earlier about making their bet at corner based on their decision for Burns and trading the pick and how they proceeded there, they made their bet at quarterback with it's okay. You identified a need or a situation, but then in the end, you weren't able to actually follow through and understand how big of a priority that needed to be. By the way, Tyrod Taylor, again, the fact that Joe Shane and the Giants thought Tyrod Taylor was coming back, I don't understand that. Tyrod going deep with a bomb to Jason Brownlee yesterday, and that prompted actually Sauce waving to the Giants sideline there. I want to tell you guys really quickly again about Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you will get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. So again, boomchaga.com, subscribe and save, TalkinBall25, get the discount. And then if you don't want to stay subscribed, you can just cancel it out. No harm, no foul. Also brought to you by BetOnline and by Estate 98 Coffee. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get a special buy one, get one free deal on this delicious all-natural coffee concentrate with no sugar. All right. Let's see. Yeah, Maresca says you got to keep Hyatt. He's young with some potential. Possibly let him play more with the ones and see how he does. He hasn't been on the field much with Slayton playing over him. Yeah, well, actually, and that kind of changed recently with Slayton kind of jumping back over him, them giving him a lot of those opportunities, but Slayton still being the more consistent player. Do I think they trade for J.C. Horn, the Joe Carolina connection? So let's look him up because you guys have all asked about JC. I just want to double check kind of some of his stats where he stands. So JC Horn, 24 years old, obviously was a first round pick a few years ago. Played in 3 games the first year, 13 his second year, and 6 games last year. So a guy who's battled injuries. Obviously if he was able to stay healthy is a really intriguing prospect. Man, imagine that too. Remember him and Patrick Surtain, both there near the top of that 2021 draft. He easily could have been the Giants pick if they had been able to get him. He was one of the players up there, with Devontae Smith and that whole group, Jalen Waddle, et cetera, that the Giants had their eyes on possibly getting before all those players got drafted in front of them. They didn't take Micah Parsons. They traded back and ended up taking Kadarius Toney and then acquiring a pick the following year that ended up becoming Evan Neal. So, what a game of dominoes that was. Jay Farry's Boom Chaga. That's right. Boom Chaga right here over my shoulder. Oh, wrong way. Right there. Right there. That's the bag. This is the bag that you get, and it's got all the little pouches that you pour in. So it's like one a day, you pour them in. Great. Love the product. And like I said, thank you, Jay, for that super chat. The best way to support our channel right now, though, is to try a bag of Boom Chaga using that Talkin Ball code. All right, let's see. Here's your issue with Hyatt. You said, it's my understanding by and large wide receivers acclimate to the NFL better than other positions. Usually a team can tell whether a guy is going to hit pretty quickly. Yeah, that's fair. Who is going to start at CB2? Possible that the guy's not on the roster yet. I do think in the current group, I think it's Nick McLeod. Nick McLeod was back there in the starting group for practice on Thursday with the ones, outside corner opposite Deonte Banks. Cordell Flott, they're definitely trying to make it work with him outside when he's healthy. He's not healthy right now, of course, and that's something he's struggled with throughout his career so far. So on the current roster, Mike, it's Nick McLeod, but that's a position the Giants have to attack, whether it's trade or waiver claims right now. Not sure how big of a splash they can make there. Like I said, I do appreciate and approve of all of your guys spitballing and ideas on how to do that. How well did Kayvon and Burns each do against Tyron Smith and the Jets O-line? Looked like Burns made a fair amount of plays, more than Thibodeau did, based on the review of those who were standing closer to the defensive side of the field. I watched a lot of highlights after the fact. I also watched the 11-on-11 periods at the end, standing right there on the sideline next to the field when both full teams were there on the same field. But Brian Burns had at least 1 sack, maybe 2, and also arguably would have leveled Rodgers on that last play. So, was making some splash plays here and there if it had been real football. D, thank you. D says Horn has been injured, but he is a true CB1. Panthers just picked up his 5th-year option. Dane Jackson just went down, and the Panthers traded with Seattle for Mike Jackson. They need to keep corners. Yeah, that's what I figured. He's also, a young, cost-controlled player like that. That's a young, high draft pick, cost-controlled, who's been a good player when he's healthy at a premium spot. Not usually the types of guys that teams are trading for. Good insight there, D-Kit. Like Surtain, for example, I remember people kept asking about were the Giants going to trade for Patrick Surtain from the Broncos. I was like, why would the Broncos trade a guy who a lot of people in the league think is arguably one of the top corners in the entire NFL? Why would they do that? But I like where you guys are brainstorming here because you're trying to make the team better. I do not believe the starters are playing, though maybe JMS sees a little bit of run. We'll see. That was purely based on, again, the period where DeVito goes over at the O-line and Dable starts just slowly, running through like the certain play calls and calls at the line. It's not even a walkthrough with the skill players. It's just them behind the end zone at first. And JMS was snapping with some of those backups who looked like they're going to start in that moment for a little bit before Schlottman came in. So that's why I think, maybe he gets a few more reps there. We'll see. JDJ says, Pat, if this team wins games, do you think Daniel Jones will get any credit? Last time we went to the playoffs, he still didn't get any respect. Oh, right. You had said that. Listen, I think for the way this team is built now, JDJ, I think they're now built in a way that Daniel Jones has to play well for them to win. And what I mean by that is they were run heavy with Saquon taking attention off of then Daniel Jones's legs and their ability to kind of work off of each other, right? Before. But I think now with Saquon gone, yes, you do have an NFL running back in Devin Singletary and a veteran at that. But this offense will not succeed if Daniel Jones does not play well. This is on the quarterback now. This is the way Brian Dable and Joe Shane want it to look from an offensive scheme standpoint. Dable is calling the plays. So I don't even think, JDJ, there's going to be a way for them to win games this year if Jones isn't helping them, isn't helping carrying them and lifting them there. And therefore it's going to be win and credit or lose and none. Jay Mazzella says, I'm so done listening to fans whine about them being tired of losing and whining online and looking to dump on players so they feel better. Grow a pair yesterday. Well, I would say there's a difference, Jay, between whining and, frustration that your team loses a lot for sure. So I think, I could see sometimes it's like, hey, let's just try to find some solutions here. But also I do think that, venting, sometimes fans need to vent. This is a safe space for that. Let's stop with the sign Xavier Howard BS. Guys got off the field issues, right? Cancer in the locker room, rather not sign them. I don't think that's going to happen. Alex says, I may have missed it, but what did Slayton say about Jones? Alex, he said that, players talk a lot, like in relation to Sauce Gardner, he said that players talk a lot about, other players, but they have to understand that, yes, so it's easy to just jump on a negative narrative and jump on board and say what everyone else is saying because it's a popular take. But he said, as a veteran who's been on the same team for 6 years, Slayton himself knows that you don't truly know who and what a player is until you see him every day. And he said, it's hard for him to take seriously when players have strong opinions on a guy that they don't know well one way or another. Because he said, unless you study a guy's film really closely or know him very well from being with him every day, he thinks most people, look at social media and look at stats and they know what's being said that's popular and they form their opinions off that. So he takes it all with a grain of salt. He also said that, guy like Patrick Peterson tries to be cool basically by saying all these things about Daniel Jones, but Jones beat him anyway. So it doesn't even make any sense. I thought one of the more interesting things he said too was, this quote cracked me up. He was just talking about the double standard of essentially Daniel Jones being in New York and the fact that being in New York and just all the publicity and how the Giants get covered differently than other teams do, he feels like contributes. He said, so I asked him, do you think Daniel's contract plays a role in why guys criticize him? And he said, of course. But he said, the thing with the money is that's what quarterbacks get paid, like in that range. He said, you don't see anybody talking about Derek Carr. And I actually think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. But I'm just saying, what did the Saints do? Derek Carr could do something bad 3 weeks in a row, and you would hear nothing about it. I don't even know what he did this preseason. I don't know if he's played good or played bad this preseason. But DJ is on Good Morning Football. It's just not the same, but it is what it is. So, that's the gist of what he was saying. He also said that the Jets just sat back and tried to take away from the deep ball in practice, Alex. So he said that's why we didn't throw the ball downfield, because they were just sitting back. So we were taking underneath, running the ball, etc. And he said, any team can just come out in practice and do that. But Slayton was pointing out that it's, again, there's nowhere for Jones to go. He said, you can't win, because he said, what would you want Daniel Jones to do? What would you want DJ to do? If DJ threw into double coverage, we would be back on SportsCenter, meaning like he'd be getting ripped for throwing a bad pick again. But he checks it down and everybody's like, oh man, we couldn't get anything going today. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Think about it, Slayton said. If he's out there and launched a double covered contested pass, people are like, what is he looking at? He checks it down to the running back and it's like, man, the Giants couldn't get anything going today. He goes, okay, basically like, you're going to believe what you're going to believe. Like he's, so that was the gist of what he said, but there's a lot of good stuff about, he said if the Jets sit back like that in a real game and just take away the deep ball, he goes, they can walk away from yesterday, beat their chest, say they held us to whatever. But in a real game, at the end of the day, if they were to play how they did, we would have ran the ball for a bazillion yards and we would have won the game. And if they came up, meaning if they moved up their defense, they would have gotten beat deep. That's what he said. So some good trash talk there. Some good trash talk from Slay. Hit the like button, y'all, says Eric Butler. Eric, thank you for saying that. Appreciate you. Yeah, guys, the live likes drives engagement, tells the algorithm to tell Giants fans out there who don't know, what we are doing here. Maurice Griffith says, hey, Pat, would you be surprised if we cut Daniel Bellinger? Is he a forgotten tool on the team? Back in the spring, I was telling people that this is a guy who was lower on the depth chart than you think. Obviously, he's been playing a lot with the first team. Doesn't look good that they were using him a lot as a fullback, and then they went and signed Jacob Johnson, who's a guy who essentially is a fullback who you would use in that role. And Johnson has seen some snaps already with the first teamers in practice, sparingly, like going in and out. I think that where the depth chart stands now, Bellinger's on the team, but I think it's a tenuous, like shaky situation there. Like, listen, you have to be reliable to be able to play. They can't be waiting for you to figure it out. He doesn't block well enough. So I think if Cager was healthy, and you had him and you had Manhurts and then you had Theo Johnson and Jacob Johnson now, I think that would, maybe mean Bellinger getting cut. I do think in general, the idea that he's like an untouchable based on his performance, I disagree with. And so I've always been on this side. In fact, I was, saying back in early June that I feel like this is something people need to keep an eye on. So he's not forgotten, Maurice. Like, if anything, they are trying to give him every possible way in the offense, especially as this fullback type, in order to find his fit and be a big part of it. But when Waller retires and then instead of it's like, oh, well, we have our guy to move up, right? They went and they're like, wow, we really need a tight end, right? Like, I think that's what people need to remember. They had Darren Waller retire, and then they said, man, we really need to use a draft pick on a tight end, right? So it wasn't like they had the guy internally that they knew was going to replace him. Orlando says, let the man play before you call a person a bust. I think you're referring to the questions about John Michael Schmitz. He has played a season, but yes, to your point, young player. So that's why, no, not a bust in any way, but a guy who you do want to see more from. And that's a very clear expectation there. D says he looks around the league and the majority of teams have their draft picks littered all over the roster and starting lineup. Yes, there are misses, but our roster, has to be better. Barb says, no way we trade Slayton. He's Daniel Jones' favorite target. Giants Universe says, how did the Giants practice today? Nobody gives updates on practices anymore. Giants Universe, the reason that there weren't a ton of updates today was because it was a very light kind of, practice with a couple periods of jog through type plays, but nothing worth like keeping stats on or anything. It was pretty much like an install day for the backups and the guys who were going to play. And the first stringers got some work in and kind of rep some play calls um, and did some install. But it was a light day. Romans 616 says, how is Adoree Jackson still unsigned? He would arguably be the best corner the Giants have. Is this simply a case of not wanting a guy from the prior regime? I know they weren't thrilled with how he played last year. This was a guy who was playing here for a lot of money. So the Giants are in a position now where if they're going to sign a guy like Adoree back, they would not be looking to spend a lot of money for it. And that's a player who has pedigree. Even though obviously, last year was not his best year for sure. This was a guy, interestingly enough, who guarded Justin Jefferson and helped shut him down when the Giants beat the Minnesota Vikings in that playoff game, and now not even on the roster. Adoree is a guy who, like these veterans in those types of situations, normally they are guys who, they don't mind missing training camp at this stage. And then they get later to this point of the year, cut down day happens, the lay of the land starts to settle in, and then the teams that know they desperately need those positions come calling. Like, you remember how late Logan Ryan, for example, signed with the Giants when Joe Judge was here? That would be, to me, the way that Adoree is going to operate going somewhere, But haven't heard his name around here yet. Continue to ask. I do know, though, organizationally, they just did not have a high opinion of how he played last year. Health and wealth to all, says Tommy. Thank you, Tommy. Alex says, no Benton Whitley on your 53. Yeah, you know what? He's one of those players, Alex, that like when I made my 53, my last two off were Schlottman and Whitley. Those are two guys that, based on how things fall, I could easily see them being on. If I put Whitley on the roster, who am I taking off? Like, are we releasing Deontay Johnson? Are we waiving Deontay Johnson and putting him on the practice squad? Or is Boogie Basham or Aziz getting cut or traded, so you're still only keeping the four edges? Or is it Jordan Riley on the interior? I think there's a lot of like interchangeable parts when it comes to those types of players. Where it's like 6 and 1, half a dozen of another. Are you keeping a depth guy who's going to help you in certain areas or not? I do think Whitley's a guy who can make the team. I was just making my own version of what it looks like today, but he is not a guy that I'm just writing off. He is definitely in the mix, on the bubble, as they say. Is Darian Beavers' time over with the Giants? I think it's possible. Or here's what I would say. As a draft pick, usually a guy like that who gets cut ends up on the practice squad. But we'll see where it goes. DJ will prove the haters wrong again. All right. Says Derek. Thank you, Derek. DJ hate is like a mob mentality, a bunch of sheep who follow each other. It's disturbing. It really is a little bit like that. Not saying he's good, but he is decent with lots of upside. Yeah, it's just so unique how he gets shredded by people all over the place. Alex says, Pat, do you think they will revert to the 2022 offense? Run heavy, play action, rollouts, slants, and drags. I'm not sure the pass heavy offense will work based on what we've seen. Alex, I actually think, I don't think you can't go fully back to that, right? Especially with Neighbors in tow. I mean, you have to be able to utilize a number one receiver. But I do think you're going to see more of the 2022 offense than people are expecting, especially because the way that we've seen them struggle to run the ball, I think they're going to continue to use those, those drag routes and those play action rollouts, those quick release, those kind of releases underneath to Neighbors, to Wan'Dale Robinson. I think they're going to view those types of plays as like extensions of running plays. And so the only element I think I have questions about is how they're going to run DJ, because Daniel Jones, obviously he's back from the knee, he's healthy, but are they going to try to unleash him on the ground as much as they did in that type of offense? And also, does Jones have the same effectiveness as a runner when someone like Saquon isn't there to take the defense's attention away from the quarterback's legs? Like that was a big part of what they were doing that year, was kind of using the defense's key on Saquon to the advantage of Daniel Jones as a runner. And so, without that in the backfield there, does that have the same effectiveness? I did feel like last season in the second year of the offense that those running plays with Jones were being sniffed out by defenses a little bit more as well. Ronald, what's up? Fire chat, fire comment. Appreciate you. Let's see. Jones' contract is based on projection, plus he was homegrown coming off a good season. This isn't a small market team that can just toss in Gardner Minshew types. That's for sure. Just feel like their evaluation was more accurate than what the contract ended up being. But obviously, politics in the building, of course, relate to how they make those decisions. It's just Daniel Jones' turn to get the microscope, says Nathan. Every other team quarterback in the league gets crazy hate when they deserve it, but Daniel Jones defenders just can't handle it. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, Slayton did say when I talked to him, he said that Dak, Daniel Jones, and Jalen Hurts, he feels like are the guys who get the most scrutiny in the league. Do you agree with that? Daniel Jones has had a microscope his whole career. Yep. Watching Bears Chiefs preseason games, seeing players carted off, sit the starters. Ugh. Yeah, the more football you watch, the more injuries you see. It's really tough. Let's see. The loyalty to Daniel Jones over the other 52 guys on the roster is weird. Giants are loyal. Yes, they are loyal to a fault in many ways. Shane Lemieux, Matt Parrott, Zimenez, tons of guys they kept around too long. Yeah, Giants have been accused of being the kind of team that is always trying to justify their own picks, that they fall in love with guys and don't fall out. That's been an accusation of them. Not homegrown good players like Saquon, McKinney, or Slayton, apparently. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not just the reward of one guy. It's like the non-rewards for the others, right? That's part of the problem. They're going to miss McKinney on defense. You can book that. I think the vitriol towards Daniel Jones by fellow players and media is going beyond criticism and is bordering on bullying, very disrespectful, says Socrates. Quarterbacks who have been just as suspect don't get the hate he does. Socrates, it's funny you use that word because one quote Slayton used that I did not put in the paper, because it is the word bullying nowadays, like accusing people of bullying obviously is a big deal now compared to, the way that we talked about that word back in the day. But he said that it's almost like when someone's being bullied at school and you just jump in and bully that person too, because it's easy because everyone else is doing it. He actually said that analogy. So interesting that you put it that way, because that was the first thing he said as well. Quarterbacks do not grow on trees. That is true. If the O-line holds up, they have in the preseason, plus the offensive weapons, Daniel Jones will hit 5,000 yards and 30 plus TDs, says Derek. Neighbors will only miss Rookie of the Year because the NFL rides QBs. Just need to bring in a Dory. Some optimism there from Derek. Omega says, don't forget about that useless pick for Kadarius Toney. Yeah, that was the previous regime, though, so we're not going to put that on these guys. Let's see. Yeah, Saquon is going to be 28 in 6 months. Xavier plays a position that's replaceable in today's NFL. Well, we'll see how replaceable it is on the Giants roster, Jay. That's one thing, right? Jay Farry says, thanks for reading some of my comments. Boom Chaga. Yeah, appreciate you, Jay. Hey, Jay, I'm telling you, buy a bag of Boom Chaga, subscribe and save option, Talkin Ball 25. You can cancel out the subscription if you need to. I think you will like it. And that's a great way to support us right now. Really appreciate that. And thank you for all your comments. But yeah, back to your comment you said earlier. Safety is considered a more replaceable position as far as positional value goes. But, are the Giants going to be able to replace him this year with the safeties they have on their roster? They're hoping Nubin can help do that. But easier said than done. Easier said than done. We'll see. Quarterback is about to be 28, and you're still talking about upside. Oh yeah, no, for sure, Nathan. I mean, it's you can't be grading on a curve at this point. You already paid the guys, or paid the guy. Ramon says 6 years into his career, we are still asking if he is the guy. I've been a fan since 1967, and I've given up defending or trying to make sense of the Giants and the fans. Yeah, it's a very strange dynamic at times, Ramon. I'll agree with that. Derek says Parrott is actually killing it in Denver now. Our former O-line coach was a bum. Well, I mean, I think we'll see how that goes. I hope Matt has a lot of success in Denver, continues to. Great guy, another person I root for a ton. But I do resist the scapegoating of the O-line coaches because let's be honest, the Giants have had 8 O-line coaches in the last 10 years. So it can't just be the coaches, right? It can't just be the O-line coaches. He might win swing tackle. Interesting. Farry says the Joe Judge years don't count. Man, I disagree. I think Joe Judge would have been a great coach for the Giants. If he just had a different offensive coordinator, I think he would still be the coach here. In fact, Brian Daboll was supposed to be his offensive coordinator. That's what he wanted eventually to happen to bring him here. Obviously, it didn't end up that way. But I thought Judge was a good CEO coach. I just think he needed his guy and an alignment on the offensive side of the ball. And if he got that, I think he'd still be here today. Let's see. Oh, Parrott. Well, the Giants they weren't afraid to play Parrott. He struggled when he did. And then, Jay, if you remember last year, Matt Parrott was the backup left tackle to Andrew Thomas, and he went in and basically got hurt pretty quickly. And then that's how Josh Azudu ended up there. Nathan says, good players are good players. It sends a terrible message to the locker room when mediocre players get paid and good players get shown the door because the GM doesn't think their position matters. Absolutely. Absolutely. Derek says he started 7 games. Bobby Johnson was just terrible at developing O-line. But again, I think it's more than that. Omar says, hey, Pat, awesome chat as always. Thank you, Omar. Thanks for being here. Will the Giants address cornerback in free agency because they are thin at the position? Yes, they are going to. They are looking to address it in some form right now. I'm interested to see exactly which route they're going to go. We've seen so far, it looks like they've been going the claim route, right? Rather than trying to expend assets. So we'll see if that continues that way. With the veteran minimum contracts that they've been handing out to guys as they've been adding the waiver claims, as teams have been releasing guys to try to just take a flyer on somebody, the Mario Goodrich, the Breon Borders, those types. Obviously, that's kind of just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, though. So I do think they're looking for more meaningful investments there because they know they need one, but they have limited cap space at $13 million right now. So, how much can they do there? I think they're going to exhaust all options though, for sure. But I can't tell you at this moment who they're quote unquote going after. That's not something anybody would know at this moment that would not get out of the building at this moment. 2 giant goofballs, a New York Giant podcast says hello. What's up, everybody? Hey, what's going on? Thanks for being here. He asks, or they ask, Pat, heard any Marcus Peters talk? I think he would be a nice stopgap at corner. Marcus Peters. Definitely some attitude with Marcus Peters. Let's see, how old is he now? I got to double check that. Undersized player, obviously, 31 years old. Played for Mr. Wink Martindale in Baltimore, obviously. So that would be interesting. Was in Vegas last year. Didn't something go on last year with him getting released in Vegas? Was there some drama there? Raiders release Peters. Let's see. So Antonio Pierce took over as interim coach. and then he benched him in the middle of a game against the Chiefs, and then they cut him. So benched and cut by the Raiders last year. So, that doesn't mean the Giants wouldn't bring him in, obviously. He's definitely a character, that's for sure. Would change the dynamic in the locker room. But, worth looking into everybody at this point. Tommy says the whole Giant culture just isn't the same. Dable doesn't know what smash mouth football, Giant football is. He clearly doesn't see value in dominating the trenches on both sides of the ball or even a run game. Tommy, I think to your point, they don't work the trenches enough, but they've been trying to invest in the offensive line and in the line of scrimmages. And this is the result right now that we see. So that's the concern. They definitely need to they need to hit on their investments in the offensive line this year. And listen, they've been putting a fullback on the field a lot this year. They look like they are going to be throwing heavy personnel out on the field in order to run play action, protect Daniel Jones for deep shots. So looks like he's trying to get some smash mouth football in there, especially because they need that pass protection when it comes to trying to give Daniel Jones time to go deep to Neighbors, Hyatt, Slayton, etc. So we'll see. AJS says, Pat, why do you think they restructured Andrew Thomas's contract? Are they looking to make a big trade? Definitely was curious timing there. There was something that was expected to happen earlier in the offseason and did not. So the timing of it now seems to indicate that the Giants are poised to be active at cutdown day here. I think it is to my best understanding, it was them freeing space to be able to operate both now as they come up on cutdown day to give themselves options, and then also throughout the season. You need some space to operate in. Chronicle says this poor Tyrod Taylor stuff has to stop. First off, he got hurt. Once you get hurt, no job is guaranteed when you come back. Tommy won, and you can't bench a kid who wins. They put Tyrod back in. Oh, no. Listen, I'm not saying poor Tyrod. I was just referring to the idea that Shane thought that Tyrod would want to play here after someone of his caliber was left on the bench in favor of Tommy DeVito. Like, that was never going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I talked to Tyrod about it. He did an interview about it. He was not pleased with it. I'm just saying from a reporting standpoint, not even judging standpoint. I'm just saying the way that it happened last year, it was very obvious and well known that it was not something that Tyrod enjoyed, or a dynamic that it wasn't like he was eager to be back in that dynamic. If that was how he was going to be handled, right? That wasn't a thing. Dave Z says, I'm super late. That said, Pat, you're a legend. Thank you, Dave Z. Better late than never. Let's see. Derek says, JC Horn is a good corner that stays injured. No thanks, unless it's a 6th round pick. Mel says, why haven't they fixed Daniel Jones' weakness yet? That was one of the reasons for Dable hire. Something is off, like him throwing on the run. They don't know their professions. Mel's, I think, you make a fair point there as far as, you hiring an offensive coach to elevate a certain player. That's why I said, if you would judge that Daniel's not the guy and you need a new quarterback, then you got to go and get him. If you feel like he's not the guy, but you pay him and then you stay with him and you try to rehabilitate him, but you can't make it work, that's how you walk yourself down the road of a 3-4 year process and end up still kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, hoping to kind of build yourself back up, and you're still too far away from where you want to be. So I guess, like I've said before, we talked earlier about Bo Nix and Sean Payton. Dable is here because he's supposed to be like the Sean Payton of the Giants. He's supposed to be fix the offense, help the quarterback, right? Those types of things. And, that's what you need his advantage to be. And that's, him calling plays is the only move for him at this juncture, and the move that had to happen really because listen, he was obviously, we know, not to relitigate it, but obviously he was taking play calling, giving it back. He gave it to Shea Tierney. He was taking it away from Kafka again. He took over the offensive meetings, gave them back. But he got hired because of what he does with offenses, right? He got hired because of what he does with quarterbacks. And so that's where you need him to flex his muscles and give you an advantage this year. He wasn't good as a game manager last year. Like, you need him to flex his muscles on offense. Formula Red. Wow. $10 super chat. Thank you, Formula. He says, I finally caught you live. Yeah, no, love it. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. He says, Daniel Jones is the definition of insanity. We put him out there year after year and expect different results, and it's no different this year. Should have moved on from him long ago. Yeah, I mean, to me, like, if I'm a Giants fan, when I'm watching Hard Knocks, it's painful, I think, if you're a fan watching that, seeing them say, well, we're trying to trade up for this quarterback, but if not, we'll just run it back with Daniel. And obviously, we know they had Russell Wilson in for a visit. That was not mentioned in Hard Knocks, but we know that they had him in for a visit. So they go from that. They go from, Drew Lock being told to have a chance to compete to start. They go from trying to trade to 3 to draft a quarterback to, all right, we didn't get him. It'll just be Daniel's year again. Like, as a fan, to me, that's got to be a really hard thing to watch, because like you said, some of you obviously believe in Daniel and you think he's going to do it. But what I'm saying too, I'm just saying, when the organization clearly has decided where they stand, even though they paid the guy and said they believed him in a year ago, when you know that they are looking for that guy and then they still run it back, that's what makes you just take a deep breath and go, right? Tommy Sweeney scored another touchdown tonight. Remember him? Yep. Giants still never actually described what happened to him on the field in practice. I think they just called it like a medical event. It never was described or explained. Ray, good evening. Good to see you. Slayton always backs Daniel. That's right. A mature vet. Sauce, not so much. Listen, like I said, even though Sauce did, implicitly throw a dig, he did stop himself from saying whatever he was about to say. That's for sure. So that was not something I saw coming. Let's see. What do we got here? Jackson says, why are we battling a constant injury bug even before the season starts? Is it just simply bad luck, or is Ronnie Barnes and his staff to hold a little blame? I think, every time there are injury issues, I think the training staff is a part of those decisions that have to do with how they practice, with how they prepare. Ronnie Barnes is the leader of that staff. Their general manager, their head coach, Ronnie Barnes, their training staff, everybody is involved in those meetings. Obviously, with Aaron Wellman involved now, working on kind of rep counts and how players manage their workloads and what's good from a build-up perspective. Those things can help. Aaron, very good at what he does. I like him a lot, but I think the Giants have a history in seasons past. If you look, 1 year the blame was how Joe Judge practices the team. And, this past year, it was implicit. If you noticed in certain answers, it was implied that, Craig Fitzgerald, the strength coach, now that they have a different strength routine, they bring in Frank Pirano, they have Aaron Wellman, that's going to be the solution. But, you need to look at everybody involved in the process and hold people accountable accordingly. You can't just selectively place blame and point the finger, right? It has to be everybody either getting the credit when you do well or getting the blame when you don't. So, yes, I do think that all of that needs to be examined closer than it has been internally. Socrates says Sauce gets burned a lot. No one talks about that. He's a pretty polarizing player, but a very, very talented one. I think Giants fans would love to have him on their team. Why don't the Giants go after Akello Witherspoon? I don't know. I think, does he have an appetite to return to the Rams? Maybe. Let me see. Rams could be open to a reunion with Akello Witherspoon. Sean McVay said I would never eliminate that possibility. I thought he did a really good job. I loved working with him last year, and that's definitely something you wouldn't eliminate. So that could be a fit with the team that he's played with more recently because they've had injuries there. But that's another name to remember as a guy who's started in this league. Let's see. The way things are showing out in Pittsburgh, I don't know. Go get Russell Wilson too. The Steelers are there's another team. There's another team makes you shake your head sometimes. But Mike Tomlin knows what he's doing as a coach too. Let's see. Dave Z says, hit that thumbs up and like this live, guys. Yeah, guys, thank you so much. Please hit the like button when you're in here. Hit the like button now as we talk, because that tells YouTube that there's engagement, there's live engagement. Fans are coming in and participating. And that's the way that Giants fans who don't know yet about what we're doing, that NFL fans who don't know about what we're doing, find out, come in and join our community here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network. Socrates already answered that. I think corner, defensive tackle, I think are positions to look at. Inside linebacker could be if depending on how serious these injuries are to the other backups. But I think corner has to be the priority right now. Interior D-line as well. Dave Z says we still suffer for the sins of Dave Gettleman. Pat Flaherty was the best O-line coach the Giants have had in my lifetime, most likely. Jay says, I am going to buy some Boom Chaga. Awesome. I am looking for a little bit of secret sauce getting into my 40s without the Frank Thomas Nugenics supplements. Excited to try it out. Thank you. Yes. No, I love it. Appreciate it. Thanks for the support. Like I said, you go to the subscribe and save option, not the one-time buy option, and use that code up there, or go use the QR code. And then you can either stay subscribed if you want or cancel it out. No harm, no foul. But that's how you get the discount, and that's how you support the channel. Thank you, Jay. Iconic, what's up? Welcome back. He says, good evening, Pat. What pick do you see us having in the 2025 draft? Right now, Iconic, I would say either 2 or 3 at the moment, depending on. So I think, to me, the Patriots are the number 1 pick favorite right now. That's my guess. After that, is it the Panthers? Is it the Giants? Right? Is that game in Germany essentially a game for the number 2 pick? We'll see. Trying to think of other teams off the top of my head that jump out that could be in that mix. I guess Washington technically could be, depending on how poorly or well they support Jaden Daniels around him. I still think, I don't know if they're going to be like completely atrocious though, considering some of the players they've added and the coaching improvements that they've had, but they also don't have the same kind of, pass rush, and their O-line still questionable. I would say the Giants have a top 5 pick would be like a safe, but is my opinion. I would say top 5. Let's give them 3. Let's say 3 right now. El Gigante says, hey, chat, what is the scenario you see where Mara says enough is enough and fires Shane? Saquon going nuts in Philly and Daniel Jones showing more of the same. How will he sell it to fan base? I think it'll be, yes, Saquon going nuts in Philly wouldn't help and could tip the scales. I think also, El Gigante, I think we read off and rattled off the draft picks earlier and how even, there's a few that have shown flashes or promise or ups and downs. I think if Joe Shane's draft picks don't start producing consistent results and that build the team through the draft mantra starts undoing the team, right? And that they're not getting growth and development and high level play from those guys, and you're still looking at a top 5 that has 3 players that are Dave Gettleman players 3 years into this process, that's when, if you're losing games as well and the wheels are falling off and your draft picks aren't helping to save the day and nobody's blossoming in that regard, that's how it happens. The Saquon issue, though, obviously is a big one. that definitely could tip the scales. This is definitely more serious of a situation and hot seat situation internally, I think, than anybody realizes. I mean, the Giants have been largely dysfunctional in a lot of ways, going back to like the second half of the first year and then definitely last season. This is not a normal, kind of, what's the word? Steady operation right now. This is one that is working to become one, but is not there yet, and definitely shoots itself in their own feet more than I think people understand. The coaching and staffing issues and the exodus from last year is something that I think is going overlooked and forgotten at the moment. Obviously, it's not what you're focused on because this is now about getting ready for a new year. But definitely an element of, kind of like a second chance for Daboll coming out of a year that easily could have been his last based on how he handled it and how it was handled. And so, he comes back looking different. He comes back sounding a little bit different. He comes back being a little bit calmer on the practice field at times. We'll see how that holds up and what differences those make. Jure Forever says, bring back Adoree Jackson to be the second corner. Evan points out, well, this is a good point. Offensive line is very important, and it will affect how the season goes. No doubt. No doubt. I think the line has a chance to be better. I don't know how much better. I think if they have Thomas and Illuminor playing healthy throughout most of the season, then, you're guaranteed to get better bookend, like tackle play around Daniel Jones than you have. Hopefully the Runyon shoulder isn't a thing that he has to continually manage. Once he's back, he's back. And, they do have professionals on the offensive line there, right? With those three additions, Illuminor, Van Roten, and Runyon Jr. Obviously, Andrew Thomas, the All-Pro. And then John Michael Schmitz, you're hoping can grow there. So you have some potential. You need to see it come to fruition. And you're right. It will have a lot to do with how the season goes. Should the Giants keep Slayton on their roster if they don't trade him? Absolutely, Timothy. He's proven to be, it's like every year. It's like people forget about him and don't talk about him much. And then you look up and he's leading the team in receiving 15 weeks in. That's again what it's starting to look like this year. What I mean by that is obviously Neighbors should end up being the Giants' leading receiver this year if everybody plays a full season. But what I mean is this training camp has gone like that, where Slayton's not the focus. He's not the guy at the top of the depth chart, et cetera. But then you look up and on the last practice of training camp prior to the preseason finale and cuts, the coach is talking about how consistent Darius Slayton is and how much he means to the offense. And he's essentially their number 2 receiver. Again, how was today's practice? It was light, iconic, just seemingly showed that they're going to play all the backups in the preseason finale. And you just got a good look at who was still working on the side there. Athens says Slayton knows that no other quarterback would target him that much. That is not true. I can tell you that. Slayton, remember, this offseason was welcoming a trade because he felt like he could go somewhere else where he might be utilized more if the Giants didn't intend to highlight his talents and his strengths. So that is not the case, but you are correct, Athens, that he and Daniel Jones get along and have a good rapport. That's for sure. Joey B. Comedy says that Dory would get beat a lot too. That's why they didn't bring him back. Yeah, no, I'm telling you, organizationally, they did not feel like he had a good year last year. 6 years, and this guy is asking why they haven't fixed Jones if he's a franchise quarterback, like most people think. Why can't he develop on his own like other quarterbacks do? And no, I think Daniel is always going to be what he is, which is he's a guy who sometimes makes the kinds of mistakes that make you shake your head. And then he makes just enough plays at other times for you to say, there's a glimmer of hope here, right? But I think that's what he is, right? I don't think it's going one way or another. I think that's what he is what I just described. So that means a guy who, basically is a low to mid level starter, and ideally that when these guys got here, when Joe Shane and Brian Dable got here, I mean, the idea was to run out the clock on what was here and then kind of build their own thing. And then they paid Daniel, and now they're here with him, and now his play is going to impact their jobs because he's their guy now. No expert on film, but Johnson is out there running the wrong routes and missing blocks. He hasn't played well to me. Bellinger has done it. Maybe Johnson will come on later in the season. Andre, very perceptive of you there. So Theo Johnson started camp well and strong. He looks to have hit a bit of a rookie wall in terms of the workload. He has dropped a lot of passes recently. And you're right. It's been rough around the edges lately. They are, though, like force feeding him onto the field, giving him tons of reps. He definitely is going to be on the field a lot and factor in, I think. So yeah, this is part of the reason why Bellinger is on my 53. But my point about Theo was they saw a need with Waller retiring for tight end. It wasn't like because Bellinger was on the roster, they felt like they were set. That was what I was saying. The fact that they saw a need for a guy. Tyreek says if Daniel Jones was on another team, he would have been released. End of story. Hard to argue with that. Let's see. Oh, Jay, sorry, I missed your super chat here. Jay says, is it an indictment on Hollywood Joe Shane that the quarterback he wanted, Drake May, looks really bad and every other quarterback looks amazing, including Bo Nix? Well, we did see that they had an eye for Jaden Daniels as well. Obviously, though, they were never going to get to 2, so that was like a complete moot point, Does it look bad that he wanted Drake May and May doesn't look good? I wouldn't necessarily say that yet because, I don't know. Is New England the best place right now for a young quarterback, right? So is he developing as well as he could there? You don't know that yet. Hardest part about watching Hard Knocks was them shopping for guys they couldn't afford in their mind and not considering the next 3 QBs who are all in line for starting jobs. Alex, well said. Starred comment. Dave Z says exactly. Them running it back with Jones is a slap in the face to the fans, almost like a single medium Pepsi per season ticket holder. Man, that joke will never get old to me. Sauce Gardner responded better than half of Giants Twitter would have, says Bill. Yeah, good point. Giants Twitter has no restraint at this point, said Alex. Dave Z says Sauce is the best in the league at knowing the right time and spot to hold receivers. Yeah. Crazy like a fox, right? Ryan Williams says, stop this crap. Daniel Jones sucks. He was given 5 years to do something and failed at it. What about the people who pay the hard-earned money to go see this trash play? Always disappointed. No, that's, listen, that is your prerogative to feel and say, and plenty of people feel the way you do. There's others who don't, but there's plenty of people who are as frustrated as you are, for sure, Ryan. Bill says, news out of Massachusetts is May is closing the gap, but probably won't be QB1, so he must be doing better. D-Kid says, I want wins. Can Pat get me those? No. Listen, the NFL did the Giants a favor, at least by giving them the Vikings and Washington weeks 1 and 2. That's the best you can ask for. So there's your opportunity if you're the Giants. Bo Nix wouldn't be good in Dable's offense. Every quarterback needs an offense for them to have the potential to be good. He works well with Peyton. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair as far as like a good fit. Very smooth throw of the football from all angles and can process fast, says Jay. Let's see. DJ says he thinks Jaden Daniels would have been perfect for Brian Dable. Seems like he would have been a good fit skill set wise. Doug says catching up on your 53 prediction is the new rule for the 2 IR spots include the 8 that they can bring back during the season. Would they save this for 2 of their better players? Doug, I don't know that if it counts towards those 8. I don't know that. I'm not sure. I need to find that out. That's a good question. But yes, it's up to 2 that you can carry through. I don't think it counts against that, but I'm not positive. I need to find that out. Let's see. Jay says, Bill, I think everyone knew Drake May would need some time. He does have some nice skills. Unsure if that would work in New York. He was always tracking to needing more time. I mean, I do think his skill sets would have worked, here. I mean, they definitely had a high opinion of him here, one of them. D says, Wink Martindale has some incredible talent on defense this year in Michigan, probably at least 3 guys who go in the first round, 2 D tackles and the top corner. I can't wait for football in general, college, NFL. You just talking about like Michigan's depth chart, like that's getting me fired up. Michael says, I'm starting to feel bad for Daniel Jones. Gets so much hate. He's a human too. Give him credit for dealing with the New York market. He does do that pretty well. Jay says, pre-draft, the idea of drafting Knicks was like putting chocolate sauce on eggs. Fans were repulsed by him. Yeah, no, well, I will say this. Like when I was at the Combine and at the Senior Bowl, watching Bo Nix throw, it was just like, I don't see it. I don't see it. William says, it sounded like the Jets just hammered us until I saw the breakdown of practice from a reliable source. The secondary did not look that good, I have to admit. William, the Jets did win the practice. I mean, when the Giants were on offense, the Jets had a couple sacks. I thought they stopped the run pretty well. The Giants had a couple, like one Wandale play that would have been like a 25-yard gain or so up the seam. One Theo Johnson catch for like about 15 or to 20 yards on the sideline. But by and large, they didn't get the ball down the field at all. And then obviously at the end of the practice, the Jets kind of owned the end of the practice there. It could have gone either way, of course, with Bobby Okereke with the interception, but Drew Phillips with the holding penalty, so that came back. And then Neighbors gets behind the defense, but drops a deep pass. So it was kind of like almost, but not quite. But yeah, the Giants defense, especially in the secondary and the passing game, the Jets got after them with Rodgers. But yeah, it was a day, William, where I don't think there was much hyperbole, at least not from my vantage point, about like what happened and what I saw. But I think the overall result of the day was the Jets were the clearly better team. Jay says, I honestly think Daniel Jones lives in a bubble and doesn't follow media at all. That's what I have heard. He gets things passed along to him by people close to him when he needs to know them or when they feel like he should see it. But you're right. He does not stay engaged in it minute to minute. What do you think of putting Hyatt in the slot? Neighbors, Slayton, and Hyatt. I think they like Wandale in that like quick game, catch and run, replace runs with quick receptions, catch and run receptions. They like Wandale a lot. Hyatt did play a lot of slot in Tennessee, basically was his primary position there. Really just, doing a lot down the field, running go routes, essentially. I don't think that's his spot for him in the pros. It's a lot of like short area quickness routes and stuff like that. I'm not sure that's his game. Part of the reason, of course, that he fell was, people wondering whether he could survive and thrive over the middle and be like a well-rounded receiver. D says, here's a hot take. While Neighbors may get more targets because he's fantastic, Slayton will lead the team in yards and receptions again. That will not be good if Neighbors does not lead them in receptions and yards. As much as that would be good for Darius Slayton, I think that would be a disappointment based on drafting this kid number 6 overall. That would be a big disappointment. 2 Giant Goofball says Slayton is the most underrated Giant. If he does another typical Slayton receiver year, he is going to tie Shepard for yards on Giants all-time list. Never understood the hate. Best draft pick last 10 years. Good pick. Great guy. Because of the value. No, I totally understand. 5th rounder, Auburn. William says, I also think this team plays hard for Daboll. He's a dog and he's a hell of a coach. I believe we can make the playoffs. Optimism coming from William there. Last year, William, as much as so much collapsed around them, the one thing Daboll did not lose was the locker room. That was the one thing he did not lose. That was the thing that ended up saving him. The players were playing hard for him. And, I talked to guys at the end of the year last year. They said that getting to the playoffs the previous year, Daboll taking them to the playoffs and them sniffing some success there, like that was something that meant something to them, even when it went poorly the following season. they felt like they could hang their hat on. Well, we've actually seen this kind of like what it can look like with this guy. So we're staying bought in. So that's what he maintained last season and what he needs to maintain this year, even if it doesn't start the best way possible. I know Daboll changed before this, Bill says, but I wonder if the Tua comments on Flores reinforces he made the right kind of change. I think, Bill, are you referring to kind of how Daboll's behaving differently? I think Daboll needed to make the change for himself. I mean, these are different situations. I don't think coaching hard is wrong. I don't think being stern and being a disciplinarian in certain ways or being no nonsense is wrong. I think Tua is referring to being demeaned by Brian Flores. Brian Daboll's issue was pointing fingers and losing his cool and, not able to keep his composure in key moments to make the right decisions that could help the team win games. And, it was interesting. Nick Sirianni from the Eagles, I was listening to his podcast I was listening to his press conference the other day. And he said he read a book this offseason and on leadership. And one thing he got from it was it said that like when something goes wrong, you shouldn't be looking to point a finger and scapegoat somebody. You should be examining how you can help it be better the next time and essentially taking accountability. And I mean, that's a lesson that I think we all should learn pretty early and try to internalize and practice, but sometimes harder at times than others. And, but when Sirianni was saying that, I knew that he was saying it's something he needed to do better. But I also thought of Daboll because that's what he has to focus on too. And that's why, again, play calling and being involved like that is good. Iconic says, can we get Milton as a project quarterback? Well, they could have drafted him. I really thought they were going to take a guy later. And I know for a fact that the Giants were poking around on those mid-round quarterbacks and like, trying to keep ties there if it was at the right value. It just never happened. But I really thought they were going to land somebody and they didn't. George, no action yet on CB2, but to me, that is the priority position come cut down day, waiver claims, maybe a trade, a veteran signing. They have to be looking. They are looking. I think Daniel Jones could be a premier backup quarterback. Good locker room guy, says Alex. Yeah, I agree with that. D Kit says, Pat, thank you again for doing this pod. Best Giants pod on the internet. Thank you, D, for saying that. And thank you so much for all of your support, for buying the Boom Chaga, for using that Talkin Ball code, for the super chats, and for helping us drive the conversations. Like you said, even helping inform one of my questions to Brandon Brown. We're generating ideas here. And listen, if you're new to this, we do these after every Giants game as well from the press box. So after the Giants-Jets game on Saturday night, I will be in the press box at MetLife Stadium doing a Talkin Ball live from the press box to tell you guys about what I saw on the field. We'll break down things about the roster, guys we talked to in the locker room, and we will be doing that throughout the year, home and away games. I really have a lot of fun with those. I come out of the locker room talking to players and coaches and tell you guys exactly what I've seen and heard, break some news, tell you some injury updates, etc. Let's see. Iconic says, do you think Locke or DeVito are seen as potential starting quarterbacks in the league? No, I do not. And yeah, I think that's the cleanest I can answer it. D Kid says, I don't believe Nick Sirianni read a book. Oh, some Eagles trash talk there. Yeah, I love it. Bill says, oh, thanks, Bill. Super chat. He says, great answer. Thanks, Pat, for the show. Thank you, Bill. Thank you as always as well. Ryan says, do you think Daboll will make play calling to suit Daniel? Because I see it coming to that. Daniel throwing the ball to receiver. Very scary. The accuracy is just not there and could hurt these receivers. Like that play where he forced the ball on the first snap to Neighbors there and almost got picked. That scared me, man. I know it was his first play back, but holy cow, just enough, right? You can't have that. Um, as far as the play calling goes, I think Dable has to go a mix of catering to Jones the way that he did the first year in 2022, but also really trying to push the ball down the field and open it up. I think it's going to be a combination of a Josh Allen type offense and a combination of mixed with the Giants 2022 offense. So underneath, a catch and run, drag routes, crosses, shallow crosses, screen passes, running plays, those types of things, misdirections with Neighbors and Wandale catch and run opportunities, Singletary touching the ball, and then shots down the field when they can take them. D Kid says, "Tell me, Pat, do the other beat writers think you're crazy for doing this?" No, I think no. I mean, it's funny. We all have our own jobs. So we all have different things we do, different things we prioritize, different things that we're asked to do in our roles. And so, everybody has a different outlet for either getting on camera or something they prefer to do that they, like me, I'm working at the New York Daily News. I'm writing for the Daily News. I'm reporting. And then also doing the podcast, doing the lives, being on camera, doing television. That is what I enjoy and put my time into alongside and complementary to that Daily News reporting and writing. And so some others just do, extra work like I do, but just in a different medium or something else that they like to channel their energy to that they feel is more worthwhile or that complements their job better. So I think people understand it and like it. It's I will say this, league wide, I'm not talking about the Giants beat, league wide. I've noticed some other people like nationally starting to suddenly create a YouTube channel and say they're on YouTube now. And I actually think that I know YouTube's been around for a while. I didn't invent the YouTube sports conversation, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like as far as being somebody who's on the inside and bringing it to you guys like this directly, I think we're ahead of the curve here. And there's not many people doing what we're doing here. And that's what makes us unique. And that's why, like, everybody who's on here, a lot of the Giants fans who pop in here, a lot of the Giants creators who pop in here and join the conversation, everybody creates great content and works hard. And I respect the work ethic and the content and everything. But I do feel like what makes us unique is that I'm working at the Daily News, at the Giants building every day with sources in the league from starting in 2016 covering the NFL. And I can bring this directly to you guys like this. Jay Ferry says, great show. Thanks. You got it. Franklin says, jumped in late, so I'll have to catch up on this one. Great work. You got it, Franklin. George, we talked about JC Horn, has been banged up, but also good player when he's healthy. Panthers aren't exactly in a position to get rid of good players, but we'll see where the Giants go. But that doesn't seem to be one that would be likely based on those factors. Iconic says, thanks, Pat, for answering that QB question for me. I was feeling that way all along. You got it, Iconic. You're here every time, man. You're a diehard. I appreciate you. Doug says 2.5 hours of this is crazy. Incredible work. Hey, you guys make it run, man. I love being here. I love doing this. Franklin says, any practice today? What's your take on if we might bring in a second corner? Vets don't like to sign during camp. Also, what type of player? Have a comp for a player who's available. Light practice today. Just the backups getting ready to work, some install. Second corner, I think, listen, Shane Bowen said it best. He said, we claimed a guy last week. We claimed a guy yesterday. We'll be claiming a guy in October. It's probably the kind of season it's going to be. Hopefully that doesn't reflect that they're not going with some sort of pedigree here if they go to add a corner. But I would think that indicates that from an investment standpoint, there's a limited amount that they have to invest in that position. So that's why I think, look for trades as well as them poaching the waiver wire. But you saw during camp, guys like Breon Borders, Mario Goodrich, these guys brought in for them to take flyers on NFL players who have been elsewhere, but end up being, clear backups. At the very least, it'll be something like that. Dave Z says, Pat, you're a machine. 2.5 hours and you're still firing through questions. I love getting to the end of the chat, making sure everybody gets heard. Alex, we appreciate you. Thank you, Alex. Great hustle, Pat. Nice work. We all enjoy your thoughts, says Jay. Thank you so much for saying that, Jay. Franklin says, last question. I always wanted to study journalism, but chose chemical engineering in college. Thought it was safer. How did you get into this? Seems like a cool job. Always wanted to do it. Editor-in-chief of my high school paper, managing editor of my college paper at the University of Notre Dame. I covered football, basketball. Had some cool interviews after college. Got an offer in Idaho, making peanuts, and decided to move back to Philadelphia, where I was from. Got a job at Temple working in academic support for student athletes. Worked there for a couple years, got laid off because my boss got laid off, and then the bosses wanted to put all their new people in. I mean, we were doing great work, but just it wasn't appreciated, right? And so that gave me a chance to kind of try again, like go back to what I always knew was my passion that I had just kind of taken a breather from when I didn't get the job I wanted right out of college. And working at the Philadelphia Inquirer, working my contacts, working the phones, answering high school score service. Like I was going to the Philadelphia Inquirer office and calling high school coaches to find out what the score was in their girls soccer game and inputting it into the newspaper for the next day. And then they asked me if I wanted to cover a high school football game for them. And I did. And then they said, hey, we want you to, help us launch this high school kind of like multimedia site. And we want you to be on camera and we want you to interview fans at games. I said, okay. And then they said, we want you to call on a St. Joe's prep football game. So I was like, okay. And I did play-by-play for a St. Joe's prep game and on and on and on. And so it eventually worked my way up to part-time there, then working at the Daily News, online sports editor, Daily News, New York Rangers beat for 5 years, and then NFL beat and becoming NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. So that's the Cliff Notes version. Eric says, Pat Leonard, would you ask Joe Schoen in press conferences the lack of experience in secondary and maybe going out trading for a veteran? Yes. Next time we talk to him, we'll definitely talk about the corner position. You got it, Eric. Steven says, first preseason game is under the microscope now. Practice. Too much instant information in current day. Miss old days when you didn't hear much out of practice. Feels like season's over already now. No, I mean, Steven, to me, I don't think, like, for me to write one story and a couple tweets out of a practice that say, hey, the Jets did this better than the Giants today. The Giants did XYZ, but and just list out what happened. Like, the funny thing is, you go back and look at how I covered the practice, for example, against the Jets. What the Giants did in offense, I literally typed the play-by-play, like, dispassionately. Here's what they did on their first series, play-by-play. Here's what they did in the second. Here's what they did in the third. You know what I mean? So, like, there were a few, a handful of good plays, a lot of underwhelming or underneath. Obviously, that's what was interesting about Slayton saying, like, how the Jets were defending, kind of saying it was Bush League, that they were just taken away deep. But I think the reaction to the reports creates the hysteria out of these things sometimes. I just don't, I don't know why people, let me put it this way, Steven. I don't know why anyone would still be talking about or debating what happened at the practice, I guess is the best way I could put it. Like, we all know what happened. We watched it. To be debating it at this point, that's what I think is crazy. Like, who cares? We covered it. We told you what happened. We move on. That's it. Now I'm with you, but I don't think you shouldn't hear about it either. Like, we should be there watching it, be reporting on it. But, there's nothing, I don't think there was anything overblown about how it was covered in the moment, at least from my vantage point and my coverage. I think if anything, if anyone's debating about the coverage of it or debating what happened in the practice, that's a little weird. I would agree with that. Ryan says, thanks for being honest and not sugarcoating a question like most of the beat writers out there. I like your show. First time seeing it. Hope to see more. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we typically do Mondays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, Ryan. Feel like we've been going around 2 hours most days recently, though we're going longer here where we're pushing towards 3 hours tonight, which was great. I love doing this. Love doing this with you guys. Passionate fan base, passionate community. And we'll talk more than just Giants, too. I mean, we talk a lot of Giants here. I am with the Giants every day for the New York Daily News, and I'm doing this podcast, Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard, with the Believe Network. Also, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. I have guests on my podcasts every week. This week's guest, if you guys come back on Friday, the 23rd, I will have an episode up with Ian O'Connor. If you see over my shoulder here, his new book, Out of the Darkness, about Aaron Rodgers, is out in stores now. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it anywhere. He's got a book signing coming up on Saturday afternoon in Ridgewood. You check that out if you live in North Jersey as well. But Ryan, also, I don't know if you heard earlier, Talkin Ball Live post games. After every Giants game, I go live on here post game as well. It's usually about an hour after the game because the game ends, go down to the locker room, talk to Daboll, talk to the players, come back up, do a little bit of writing to finish up for the Daily News, and then go live. Sometimes it's quicker, though. But basically, if you're subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, PL and NFL on YouTube. And it usually will, if it doesn't, you can turn notifications on. It should notify you when I'm going live on your phone or computer or whatever it is. By the way, guys, reminder, if you love what we're doing, as so many of you are saying you do, please hit the like button while we are live. Please subscribe if you're not already. But the like buttons while we are live, it really helps drive engagement. It tells everybody we're here. So people like Ryan can come in, see what we're doing, and then they become a part of our community. Eric says, Washington in talks with Ayuk. The Giants better well address secondary. Makes it more imperative. Wake up, Sleepy Joe. Yeah, well, I still think, Eric, because that's already a team. That's a team with weapons, a team with a quarterback who's interesting, right? One thing I will say is that matchup to me comes down to the Giants have a chance because they're D-line against the Washington offensive line. Now, obviously, if they have enough weapons and they can get the ball out quickly and they can run the ball, of course, they could negate that. But that's why the Giants have a chance in that game, Washington's O-line. Eric doesn't think Flop McLeod Banks is it. Mike says, you're the most engaging Giants reporter easily. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. Dave Z says, from the Philly area, huh? Are you a closeted Eagle fan? No, I don't root for an NFL team. I don't have that luxury. When I went to Notre Dame, there were games I was in the student section, and then there were games where I would work in the press box for the paper, cover the team, cover the game, be down on the field late in the fourth quarter, in the locker room after, shirt and tie. And so that, very early, I was practicing. Okay, this is a team I'm rooting for, but now I'm working and I'm not cheering. And it becomes kind of weird at times because you enjoy being a fan, you get into it because you love sports and you love being a fan and you love being passionate. But eventually it becomes, just a part of how you do it. I mean, you just see things a different way. So you don't always get to experience the passion of being the fan as much, which obviously is a loss, but also obviously it's a fun job. It's a great thing. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love doing it. This is a funny story though. So I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up, rooting for Philly sports or whatever. And when I was covering the Rangers, they were playing the Flyers in a playoff series. And I was doing a lot of TV at the time for SNY. I would do a pregame from the bench. I would do post game from, somewhere in the stands. And I would also be writing for the Daily News, et cetera. So there was one game in Philadelphia. This is the city I grew up in, right? I grew up rooting for the Flyers. And I was in the stands and I had a blue dress shirt with I think a red, white, and blue tie or something like that, or maybe just a red tie. And so the place was mostly empty, but there were Flyer suite above where I was kind of still hanging out, ending their night. Definitely had a few cocktails. And as I start trying to record my segment with the cameraman there in the stands, they start screaming down, "Get the F out of here. Go back to New York. Go back to New Jersey. You suck. F the Rangers," all that stuff. And it was so funny because I'm from Philadelphia. Obviously, I was working in this market, and they just figured because I dared wear blue at all, that I was a guy who, couldn't be there supporting the Flyers at this point. So I just turning this light off here. We've been going so long that the light I had on me, the battery just ran out. That's how long we've been going, almost 3 hours. Anyway, that was a funny story, but that's how objective I am. I'm at the point where I'm just getting heckled by everybody. you get heckled a little bit by everybody, you're being objective and you're somewhere in the middle. Doug says, interesting. You went from the peanut factory to an NFL reporter. Quite the story. I think you mocking me there, Doug? Jumanji says, damn, you're still going 2.5 hours later. We'll rewind later. Great stuff, Pat. Thank you, Jumanji. Andre, my man, what's up? Let's see. D-Kid says, why wouldn't Daboll talk with Saleh and ask him to come out of the 2 deep shell so that the Giants could get some work on the deep ball? It's a joint practice, for heaven's sake. Seems Bush League to me. Yeah, that's a good question there, D-Kid. Like, if Slayton's saying that they just wouldn't come out of that, then why didn't they work it? To be honest, I mean, no love lost between the Jets and the Giants. Like, they're trying to beat each other. I think that's what that reflects, is that the Jets are trying to win the day. The Giants are trying to win the day, etc. Joe says, Pat, you're about to catch all of us that just got done watching Kamala accept the nomination at the DNC. Well, I don't think I can. I don't think this is going to be going too much longer, but you guys can definitely watch the rewind coming soon. Or actually, it'll be housed on the YouTube channel. But thanks for coming in, Joe. Great to see you. Thank you, Pat. Really sounds like you earned your way. Lots of grinding it out with your start. Impressive. Thank you, Steven. Yeah, listen, grateful to everybody who has helped me, but also proud of putting in the work and seeing some rewards. Next week's 53-man cut down day will bring 3 or 4 new players. Stay tuned, says John. John, I'm going to say 5 or 6. My number right now is 6 new players. That's what I'll say. Just to ballpark it. Doug says he was referring to the job offer to make peanuts in Idaho. It's Idaho potatoes, I believe, is what you're referring to. Guys, this has been amazing. We're going We're almost at 2 hours and 50 minutes. I want to tell you one more time about Boom Chaga. Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. D Kit knows, he likes it. Jay Farries is going to buy a bag. He's excited. It's a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. I personally have felt let's see. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or the QR code on your screen right here, you will get a 25% off discount on your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. That's the subscribe and save option, Talkin Ball 25, and get the discount. You can always cancel the subscription. You don't have to stay subscribed if you don't want. Like I said, best way to support the channel right now is to buy and try 1 bag of Boom Chaga using that subscribe and save order. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 coffee on ice and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte from this all-natural concentrate. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. Also brought to you by Bet Online here on the Believe Network. Don't know if the Commanders are going to get Ayuk. We will see. That would certainly be interesting. They did just trade Jahan Dotson to Philadelphia. Maybe they're going to bring Ayuk in. I'm going to have to work the phones on that one. Todd says, just finished watching the Bears. Yeah, the Giants should have hired Poles, and it is more than one lucky trade. Ooh, that's an interesting one to follow, right? Concurrent rebuilds, Bears and Giants. Dave Z says, much love to you and yours, Pat. Have a great night and enjoy that Boom Chaga tomorrow morning. I will. D-Kit says, just get the Boom Chaga, people. It's very good, and it supports the show. Get the cobwebs out of the wallets. Yeah, D-Kit, thanks for saying that. I'm telling you, if everybody just tries one bag of Boom Chaga, enormous way to support the channel. Try it out. You will not regret it. I promise you, you like it. It'll be part of your new routine. It's a part of mine. Not just saying that because they're a sponsor. Genuinely, that is part of the reason why they are a sponsor, because I first tried the product and I believe in it. Guys, 2 hours and 50 minutes Talkin Ball live. This has been awesome. Next live will be Saturday night after Jets Giants. I will see you after that. Yeah, Joe says Boom Chaga has been endorsed by D-Kit and Jay Ferries. It must be good, no doubt. So listen, we will see you after Jets Giants Saturday night right here on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube channel at PL on NFL. And on Friday, in the interim, please come back and watch and listen to the Ian O'Connor podcast about his new book, Out of the Darkness, about Aaron Rodgers. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify, thank you for listening on the audio version. And please join us next time on YouTube if you can. Joe says, good night, Pat. I am a fan, says, thanks, Pat. Good night. Joe also says, you should really do a collab with Big Blue Banter. Something Jay Ferries and D-Kit also have endorsed. I will look into that. I know one with Authentic is coming up. Evan says, thank you for making me feel better, Pat. Currently not feeling well. Evan, I hope you feel better. I hope this, I'm glad this did help you through a tough evening here. And, listen, try some Boom, try some Estate, get some sleep. Looking forward to seeing you back here on Friday and on Saturday to talk more Giants, talk on NFL. Evan, everybody wish Evan feel well, and hit those likes one more time on the way out. Take care. Have a good night. Thanks again.